soaring into the heavens. It was as if a ball of flame had erupted from the gates of hell, ready to set the entire sky ablaze. Boom, boom, boom. The fireball began to expand at an astonishing speed. Its edges rolled with scorching red and orange flames, while the core reached an almost white-hot temperature. As the fireball ascended, a powerful shockwave spread outward with the force of a tidal wave. The sand and stones on the Gobi Desert were instantly lifted, surging and rolling like a roaring sea. The fierce winds howled, carrying the power to destroy everything, sweeping across this desolate land. Everyone was deeply shocked by the scene before them. Even though they were just watching on a screen, they were stunned by the earth-shattering destructive power. At that moment, some of them seemed to be transported back to the time when they witnessed the explosion of a nuclear weapon. The scene back then was just as shocking as what they saw today. No, to be precise, it was even more exaggerated than what they witnessed today. Suddenly, the operator's voice broke the silence, waking everyone from their shock. He trembled as he reported, "General Su, data has come in from the forward observation post. According to their detection, a massive fireball has appeared at the explosion center, with a height of 4,800 meters and a diameter of 56,000 meters. What? Did you just say how much?" Zhou Jingting asked incredulously. The operator was startled by his reaction and quickly repeated, "Height of 4,800 meters, diameter of 56,000 meters. The explosion range is at least 2,400 square kilometers." Boom. Hearing the operator's words, everyone present was stunned. Their heads buzzed as if thunder was rolling inside. Zhou Jingting, Lu Qingji, and Zhao Lao, along with almost all the high-ranking officials, gathered around the operator. They looked at the screen. Even if they didn't recognize those parameters, they understood the information coming from the front lines. When they saw that the frontline data matched exactly what the operator had said, they were completely convinced. They believed in that terrifying data that was hard to fathom. An explosion range of at least 2,400 square kilometers. What does that mean? To put it into perspective, the area of Shenzhen is 199,747 square kilometers. It was equivalent to a single strike destroying an entire city. So, does that mean I won the bet just now? Zhao Yong said in disbelief. The terrifying number he casually mentioned turned out to be even worse than he had predicted. It was more than double what he had said. But according to the rules, his guess was indeed the closest. So, Zhao Yong, you owe us a treat. Zhou Jingting nodded. Isn't it who loses pays? Are you kidding me? Zhao Yong was about to retort when he remembered what Zhou Jingting had said earlier. It seemed that the winner indeed had to treat. Damn, while they were talking, the testing site staff sent another message. Leaders. They also reported that the observation point nearly 1,000 kilometers away was also affected. 1,000 kilometers away was affected. This startled Su Chun. However, he soon breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that the observation personnel had been moved over 1,000 kilometers away. Otherwise, they would definitely have been affected. At this moment, an older expert spoke up. These data are truly terrifying. I feel that this power is absolutely comparable to the might of the largest hydrogen bomb in human history. That is, equivalent to thousands of tons of TNT. At this moment, no one in attendance voiced any disagreement, because the facts were right there. The power of the electromagnetic railgun was indeed that frightening. On the other side, the personnel responsible for calculations had already driven to a location about 1,000 kilometers from the explosion center. They could see human settlements in the distance. This meant that their current position was nearing the edge of the desert. If we continue walking, we will soon be out of the desert. A young soldier responsible for calculations looked confused. He turned to the person in charge. Old squad leader, why did the higher-ups ask us to withdraw so far this time? We are at least 1,000 kilometers away from the target location now. I remember you said that during the hydrogen bomb test, we only withdrew about 300 kilometers. This time seems too far. The person in charge also found it strange. It was indeed quite a distance. He was about to say that the higher-ups might not be sure about the distance regarding the weapon being tested, so for safety reasons, they had instructed them to withdraw further. However, before he could say anything, an alarm suddenly rang out from the testing equipment. Their expressions changed. Knowing that the test was entering the most critical phase, they hadn't fully reacted when they suddenly saw what looked like meteors falling from the sky, crashing to the ground. Then came a tremendous shockwave that shook the ground. They could clearly see a dazzling white light suddenly appear at the center of the testing site. Following that was a massive shockwave that spread outwards. The distant mountains trembled slightly under the impact of the shockwave. The booming sound accompanying the white light was like thousands of thunderclaps, shaking everyone's eardrums. At the same time, it echoed across the vast land, lingering endlessly. The air at the explosion center was heated to extreme levels, creating a bizarre distortion, as if space itself was deforming under this force. If they hadn't all witnessed this scene, they would have thought they were hallucinating. The young soldier lay on the ground, staring at the explosion center, stunned. His heart raced. He was grateful for following orders and withdrawing far away. Otherwise, it could have cost him his life. The person in charge, an experienced veteran, did not lie down but stood straight, his eyes inexplicably moist. He slowly raised his arm, saluting the explosion in the distance, just as he had done when he was young and saluted the atomic bomb explosion. Our country has developed powerful weapons to protect us. The person in charge lowered his hand, a kind smile on his face. Chapter 89. This kid is too impressive. What do you think we just tested? Could it be a mushroom bomb? No. I've had the fortune of seeing a mushroom bomb before. and its power wasn't this great. Besides, we've tested mushroom bombs before, so there shouldn't be a need to test them again now. What could it be? The soldiers responsible for calculations were very curious, with many guesses in their minds. Meanwhile, at Base 1, the senior officials were equally bewildered. Lu Qingji, who had previously guessed that the explosion radius should only be a few dozen square kilometers, was probably the most shocked. His guess was worlds apart from the reality. This was beyond his expectations. He looked at Su Chun, who was collecting data, and asked in a daze, "Hey kid, isn't the power of this electromagnetic artillery a bit too much? You just said that what was tested earlier was a hydrogen bomb, and I believe it. Only an electromagnetic railgun could shoot out a mushroom cloud like that, right?" Su Chun grinned and was somewhat shocked. "Isn't a greater power a good thing?" Zhou Jingting smiled bitterly and replied, "It's definitely good. But while it's good for us, the countries around us are probably not going to be happy about it. The explosion's impact radius is too large. Neighboring countries will definitely be affected. How are we going to explain this to them?" Su Chun continued to grin. "What's so difficult about that? If they ask, just say it was a meteorite impact." Meteorite impact? What a ridiculous excuse. Su Chin's remark left them speechless. The reasoning was so outrageous that no one would believe it. However, they soon recalled the scenes they had seen earlier. As the projectile descended, cutting through the sky straight towards its target, it seemed indistinguishable from a meteorite impact at first glance. Moreover, given the projectile's altitude and distance, who could tell whether it was a shell or a meteorite? Thinking this way, the excuse seemed somewhat reasonable. The senior officials exchanged glances, realizing they all shared the same thought. Zhou Jingting then suggested, "Why not just explain it that way? Let them believe it or not. If they don't, we can always have a showdown. Or let them experience what a meteorite impact feels like. They'll probably believe it then." The other senior officials nodded in agreement. "I think that's feasible. Although this excuse is a bit far-fetched, it does have some logic to it. So let's announce it as a meteorite impact. Also, we need to secure the area. Otherwise, there will definitely be a lot of meteorite enthusiasts trying to hunt for meteorites. If they don't find any meteorites, but instead find debris everywhere, won't that expose the truth?" Lu Qingji added. Su Chen looked at the top brass, who had just thought his excuse was flimsy but were now quickly changing their tune, and couldn't help but find it amusing. At that moment, Lu Qingji glanced at the electromagnetic railgun not far away and excitedly said, "The destructive power generated by this super-large caliber electromagnetic railgun is absolutely comparable to a hydrogen bomb. And the key is that it doesn't fall under nuclear weapon regulations. This means we can use it freely without being bound by nuclear treaties." Upon hearing this, the others suddenly reacted, with General Zhao Yong being the most excited. He slammed his thigh and exclaimed, "That's right. This thing isn't a nuclear weapon. We can use it however we want in the future. It can completely serve as our strategic weapon for deterrence abroad. And isn't this an electromagnetic railgun? It's mounted on our warships. This has the land army generals envious." Now the Air Force had mechs, 2 of them, each more impressive than the last. And now the Navy had something with destructive power comparable to nuclear weapons, without being subject to nuclear weapon treaties. Meanwhile, the land army was left staring blankly, having nothing. "Damn it. Are we going to be phased out in the future?" thought a certain army general. However, after the initial excitement, Zhao Yong seemed to come up with a critical question. He suddenly became tense, looking at the enormous electromagnetic naval gun, and asked Su Chun, "Comrade Su Chun, this electromagnetic naval gun is so large. The power must be considerable, right?" Everyone turned to Su Chun, who calmly replied, "Indeed, it is quite significant. It requires around 100,000 megawatts. 100,000 megawatts? Upon hearing this, except for those who had no concept of this data, others were nearly dropping their jaws in shock. Lu Qingji noticed Zhou Jingtian's strong reaction and, being unfamiliar with this aspect, immediately asked, "Boss Zhou, can you explain to us what 100,000 megawatts means? Is that a lot?" Zhou Jingtian let out a gentle breath. "It's not just a lot. It's quite a considerable amount. You all should know about our Sanmingxia hydropower station, right? This is an important large hydropower station in our country, capable of generating a terrifying amount of electricity for our use each year. But even it has an installed capacity of only 225 megawatts. 100,000 megawatts is equivalent to over 400 times that, running for 1 hour at 100,000 megawatts requires 100 million kilowatt hours of electricity. That's nearly a month's worth of electricity production from the Sanmingxia hydropower station." Now everyone finally understood the terrifying aspect of it. In this light, while the electromagnetic naval gun had immense power, it was indeed an absolute energy-consuming monster. Working for 1 hour would require nearly a month's worth of electricity production from the Sanmingxia hydropower station to supply it. At this moment, someone asked Zhao Yong, "What is the power of a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier's reactor?" Zhao Yong replied gravely, "Around 100 megawatts. 100 megawatts versus 100,000 megawatts? Our warships simply can't utilize this electromagnetic naval gun," someone remarked. "Not to mention we don't even have a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Even if we did, the energy it provides wouldn't be enough for this energy-consuming monster." Zhao Yong sighed helplessly. Indeed, it was utterly disappointing. Just as they had been so excited moments ago, now they felt equally downcast. Lu Qingji, seeing Zhao Yong, who was of advanced age, still so concerned about the naval cause, couldn't help but comfort him, saying, "It's okay. Zhao, even if we can't mount the naval gun on a ship, we still have the first-generation mecha. The first-generation mecha can completely replace carrier-based aircraft and become a powerful asset for the Navy. Moreover, when Su Chun initially designed the first-generation mecha, he was also thinking of you guys in the Navy. Zhao Yong nodded, feeling much better. Although they couldn't use the electromagnetic naval gun, the first-generation mecha was indeed quite good. But at that moment, he seemed to realize something and suddenly looked at Su Chun with disbelief, asking, Xiao Lu, did you just say that the first-generation mecha was also made by Comrade Su Chun? Lu Qingji was taken aback. You didn't know such significant news? Zhao Yong, no one told me. He turned to Su Chun, his eyes shining with incredulity. Wow, the first-generation mecha, the space mecha. And now this incredible electromagnetic naval gun. It's all been produced by Comrade Su Chun alone. This kid Su Chun is really impressive. Chapter 90. Su Chun's thoughts. New type warship. Thank you for the praise, Chief Xiao. However, I'm not that impressive. Everyone has their own area of expertise. I just put in a bit more effort in research than others. For example, I've loved studying technology since childhood. I started reading popular science books at the age of 3, and by 5, I had read every available popular science book on the market while other kids were playing in the mud. By 7, I was already reading books on relativity and quantum mechanics, and that year, I also began studying nuclear physics. Su Chun spoke calmly, but his words struck like thunder in the minds of everyone present. The prominent figures in attendance were all stunned. Reading popular science books at 3, finishing those books by 5, studying relativity and quantum mechanics, which are taught at the university level, at 7, and even researching nuclear physics. Is this even human? This is simply a prodigy. General Zhao Yong was taken aback. Su Chun, is what you said true? If it is, you can't just be called a genius. You can be considered a prodigy. Su Chun smiled widely. Of course it's not true. Damn it. I used to watch successful people brag about how they weren't interested in money and all that. At that time, I secretly vowed that when I succeeded, I would say the same. Now that I finally said it, especially in front of so many prominent figures, it feels so good. General Zhao's gaze fell again on the electromagnetic cannon. He seemed to be imagining what a magnificent sight it would be to have the electromagnetic cannon mounted on a warship. It's just a pity that even a military genius like Su Chun seems to have no solution. However, the next moment, he realized he was wrong. Su Chun walked over to the electromagnetic cannon, pointed to the base waiting to be installed, and said, General Zhao, you really don't need to worry. The electromagnetic cannon can definitely be mounted on the warship. My original design intention was for it to be installed on a warship as a super turret that can move on the sea. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present was stunned. But soon, Zhao Yong reacted and smiled wryly. Comrade Su Chun, you might not have understood my point earlier. Being able to install it and being able to use it are two completely different concepts. You don't need to comfort me. The energy consumption of such a terrifying electromagnetic cannon is something that ordinary warships cannot supply. We should wait until our nuclear-powered warship is developed. Even if the nuclear-powered warship is developed, it still may not be usable. Seeing that Zhao Yong didn't believe him, Su Chun solemnly said, Actually, that's exactly what I mean. I already have a solution to the energy problem. The expressions of those present suddenly changed. They didn't expect that Su Chun actually had a solution. He has a way to feed this energy-devouring monster? If there really is a solution, it would be a tremendous benefit not only for the Navy, but for the entire country as well. The device that can feed the energy-devouring monster must be capable of providing an extremely terrifying amount of energy. The country definitely needs such a powerful device to meet the terrifying national power demands. However, even though Su Chun has demonstrated his strong capabilities in scientific research through mechs and various military weapons, there are still uncertainties about whether he can truly tame this energy-devouring beast. It's not that people don't trust Su Chun, but the energy consumption of electromagnetic naval guns is a truly frightening figure. The leaders present exchanged glances, their eyes filled with disbelief. Except for one person, Lu Qingji. The one who knows Su Chun's research the best suddenly thought of the space mechs. Those giant mechs, dozens of meters tall, must also have high energy consumption. The coal-processing nuclear reactor equipped in them is precisely nuclear power, isn't it? Thinking of this, Lu Qingji looked at everyone and immediately said, I believe we can trust Su Chun. You've all seen the space mechs. Their massive size requires a powerful energy supply just to lift off, let alone roam in space. Yet Su Chun has made it a reality. Although this electromagnetic naval gun also consumes a considerable amount of energy, I believe that since Su Chun says he has a solution, he definitely has a solution. Zhao Yong, incredulous, asked, You have so much confidence in Comrade Su Chun? Lu Qingji grinned. Of course. This is our country's treasure. Seeing Lu Qingji's confidence in Su Chun, Zhao Yong nodded. He then turned to Su Chun. Since Comrade Su Chun is so confident, and it's for the advancement of our naval cause, we absolutely cannot be vague. As he spoke, his gaze swept across the other high-ranking naval officials, who all nodded in agreement. Zhao Yong then added, Comrade Su Chun, starting today, our Navy will fully cooperate with you. Even if you need warships, regardless of the types, we can accommodate you. You can mobilize them as you wish. Upon hearing this, all the other leaders were taken aback. Moreover, when Zhao Yong made this statement, none of the other naval leaders objected. This means they all implicitly agreed with Zhao Yong's sentiment. At this moment, the entire naval high command of the country chose to believe in Su Chun. To put it a bit exaggeratively, even if Su Chun were to mobilize an aircraft carrier group to attack a certain country, They would think he was conducting some kind of experiment for his upcoming research work. Su Chun was also somewhat flattered by this trust. The idea of freely mobilizing warships certainly indicated their confidence in him. Let us go. Let us go deal with them. Of course, that was just a joke. At least not right now. He cleared his throat and smiled, saying, "Thank you all for your trust. However, I think instead of modifying existing warships, it would be better to create a new type of warship. While developing the electromagnetic naval gun, I thought that with our current technology, we could attempt to design a new type of warship. This warship would be equipped with a super large caliber electromagnetic naval gun, and single soldier combat mechs would replace the original onboard aircraft. As for the energy part, we would use a nuclear fusion reactor." Su Chen's eyes sparkled with anticipation, seemingly looking forward to the day the new warship would take shape. His words left the distinguished guests dumbfounded, especially Zhao Yong. As a senior official in the naval sector, he was exceptionally familiar with warships. While Su Chun was discussing the new type of warship, Zhao Yong was simultaneously envisioning its design in his mind. A fusion reactor as the power source, a super large caliber electromagnetic naval cannon as the weapon, individual combat mechs responsible for supporting and protecting the warship. Goodness, what an incredible warship is this? At this moment, Zhao Yong's mind was flooded with images of the warship that Su Chun had just described, as if a movie were playing. The new type of warship, resembling a futuristic sci-fi weapon, left him in endless shock. The image gradually became clearer, and every detail of the warship was magnified in Zhao Yong's mind. From the sharp bow to the towering and imposing bridge, it was filled with formidable individual combat mechs. The super-large caliber electromagnetic cannon pointed towards the sky, exuding an aura that seemed to want to shatter the heavens. However, what shocked him the most was the mention of the fusion power. Fusion technology, a cutting-edge field that is yet to be broken through globally, has always been the dream target of countless scientists. For a long time, research teams in various countries have been tirelessly working to achieve controllable nuclear fusion, but they still face numerous insurmountable technical challenges. And now, Su Chun actually said he wanted to apply fusion technology to warships. This was simply unbelievable. Zhao Yong's thoughts were suddenly pulled back to reality. He recalled the current state of development in the energy sector around the world. While nuclear fission reactors have seen some application, they are fraught with limitations. For instance, the issue of handling nuclear waste has long troubled various countries, and their energy efficiency is relatively low, making them incomparable to fusion. He thought he must have misheard. Su Chun, what you just mentioned must be about fission technology, right? Fusion technology has not truly been developed by any country globally. The other distinguished guests were also looking over. They shared Zhao Yong's thoughts, all believing that Su Chun had made a mistake, mislabeling fission technology as fusion technology. It is known that a single word can make a huge difference. But then they felt something was off. Su Chun is known for his almost monstrous research capabilities. Could he really make such a basic error, confusing fission with fusion? Clearly, that was not possible. Su Chun solemnly reiterated, "I am talking about fusion." The crowd was completely stunned. Fusion. Su Chun was indeed talking about fusion. He even understood such advanced technology. Currently, other countries are still in the initial exploratory phase of fusion and have not even begun research. Su Chun continued, "The limitations of fission reactors are too many. Their energy efficiency is low, and they cannot be compared to fusion at all. Specifically, the plasma generated by fusion can be directly converted into electricity through magneto-hydrodynamic generators. The power generation efficiency can reach over 90%. This figure has left everyone astonished. They understand what such a high efficiency means. If Su Chun really achieves a breakthrough in nuclear fusion, it will be a key that can change the future of humanity." Old Zhao quietly listened to Su Chun's explanation, feeling a surge of emotions. He recalled the technological transformations he experienced throughout his life, from the era of steam engines to today's information age. Each technological advancement brought about earth-shattering changes. Now, the emergence of nuclear fusion technology will undoubtedly trigger another global technological revolution, enough to shock the entire world. Even the Nobel Prize would have to rise from its resting place to award Su Chun. "Alas, it seems I am truly getting old. I can no longer comprehend the direction of the times." Lu Qingji spoke up to comfort him. "It's all right, old Zhao. It's okay if we can't understand the direction of development. After all, we have Su Chun leading us. This time, our country is likely to take the lead in the world." The big shots present all nodded in agreement. Although they were full of confidence regarding the future development of their country, believing that one day they would stand at the pinnacle of the world again. That could be 2 or 3 decades, or even 50 years or a century away. However, with Su Chun's arrival, this plan has undergone a tremendous change. It might be possible to achieve the true revival of the country within 10 years, or even 5. "Su Chun, you don't need to feel pressured. We will fully support you." Lu Qingji realized too late, worrying that his earlier words might put pressure on Su Chun. "Old Lu, don't worry. There's no pressure for me. It's just a matter of getting a boost." After explaining the principles of nuclear fusion power, Su Chun was also looking forward to it. He turned to Zhao Yong. "So, old Zhao, are you interested in building such a new type of warship?" Zhao Yong was so tempted by the vision Su Chun painted that he nearly drooled. "Of course, I am interested." Not just him, but several other high-ranking naval officials also chimed in. "Comrade Su Chun, I believe that once that kind of warship is built, it could help us dominate the globe. We may not understand the technology, but we know that if you truly dare to build it, We will absolutely support you without hesitation. Looking at the major powers around the world, our Navy has developed the latest, so we one team missed this opportunity to catch up. Comrade Su Chun, we entrust you with the great cause of our Navy. The other naval leaders stepped forward, all saluting Su Chun. Zhao Yong followed suit, solemnly saluting this young man who was 2 generations younger than him, who could even be his grandson. Su Chun calmly returned the salute. He is also a soldier, so it is entirely normal to return a salute. Su Chun realized that this warship must be built. Otherwise, he would have deceived some of the top figures in the country. At this moment, Zhao Yong suddenly thought of something and asked, by the way, Su Chun, I almost forgot to ask, what do you think the tonnage of this new type of warship would be? Su Chun thought for a moment, carefully considering in his mind, and finally gave a rough estimate. A conservative estimate would be at least 100,000 tons. 100,000 tons. The senior naval officials couldn't help but gasp. It's important to note that the most advanced destroyer in the nation has a maximum displacement of only 20,000 tons. Yet the so-called new type of warship that Su Chun mentioned could reach a displacement of 100,000 tons. General Zhao immediately asked, Su Chun, are you planning to build an aircraft carrier? 100,000 tons. This is something only an aircraft carrier could achieve, right? And not just any aircraft carrier, but a super one. Su Chun shook his head. It's not an aircraft carrier. This warship is meant to engage directly in combat. After thinking for a moment, Zhao finally understood. An image of a conceptual warship appeared in his mind, powered by a fusion reactor, equipped with large-caliber electromagnetic cannons, a squad of individual combat mechs, and with a massive displacement of 100,000 tons. This new type of warship, could it be a battleship? So Su Chun is going to build a new type of battleship that combines various advanced technologies. Chapter 92, Oil Nation, will be the main force. A battleship is a large surface warship equipped with large-caliber artillery, super thick protective armor, underwater defense capabilities, a substantial cruising range, and suitability for deep-sea operations. Historically, it was the core power and main combat vessel of naval fleets. For example, the famous Congo-class battleship in history had an impressive full-load displacement of over 35,000 tons. This product from the last century had a displacement even more exaggerated than our current advanced destroyers. That is why Zhao Yong believes the new type of warship is a battleship. At this point, Zhao Yong had no more doubts. With the successful test firing of the electromagnetic naval gun, Su Chun began preparations to manufacture the new type of warship. A week later, at the Longheng shipyard. This is the largest shipyard in the nation, located on a vast coastline, backed by rolling green hills and facing the tumultuous sea. Sunlight sparkled on the sea surface, creating shimmering waves that contrasted with the massive steel structure of the shipyard, forming a magnificent industrial scene. At a glance, the dry dock resembled a giant open mouth, surrounded by towering gantry cranes, reaching several dozen meters high, with sturdy steel beams coated in bright anti-rust paint, glistening in the sunlight. They could easily lift tons of steel and equipment. The advanced destroyers and several aircraft carriers of the nation were all born here. At this moment, all employees were mobilized for the development of the new type of warship. All external shipbuilding orders were put on hold. For a long time to come, all resources and manpower would be dedicated to ensuring the development of a new type of warship. Zhao Yong led Su Chun into the shipyard, where they could see many people standing by, ready and waiting for Su Chun to assign tasks. The old general introduced, these people are the heads of various departments in the shipyard. From now on, they will all follow your orders. Personnel from other shipyards will also be dispatched as quickly as possible. Additionally, our naval forces will fully support your work. Just let us know if you need any assistance. The voice of the old general was loud, seemingly intended for the heads of those responsible to hear. With him, the naval commander of this nation backing him. No one could underestimate Su Chun because of his youth. In fact, after his statement, the various heads of the shipyard were indeed taken aback. They had not expected that the entire shipyard was halted due to this young man, who looked to be just over 20. Moreover, it wasn't he just that. They would also mobilize employees from other shipyards to serve him. Even personnel from the military would provide assistance. Who exactly was this young man? Why did it feel like the entire country was revolving around him? These heads couldn't help but whisper among themselves. However, after discussing for a long time, they couldn't come to any conclusion. At this moment, they recalled the confidentiality agreements they had been asked to sign earlier. That agreement was of a higher grade than the one made during the aircraft carrier construction. They suspected it might be related to this young man. At this time, the young man's gaze swept over them and finally landed on Zhao Yong again, and he calmly nodded. If I need help, I will let you know. However, since it involves the research and development of fusion technology, even if Zhao Yong couldn't handle it, the influential person who had written to him would definitely be able to. Therefore, even if Zhao Yong didn't say this, Su Chun wasn't worried at all. The shipyard was already prepared. The staff were busy being mobilized. Various necessary materials were waiting for Su Chun to sort out and then procure. Finally, Zhao Yong inquired about the cost. Su Chun, this new type of warship that combines various advanced technologies must be quite expensive, right? After all, according to Su Chun, this was a nuclear-powered warship. And unlike current nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, it relied on fusion technology rather than fission. What would the estimated budget be? I will report it to the higher-ups later. Zhao Yong continued. Su Chun had already calculated the approximate cost, and since Zhao Yong asked, he answered truthfully. It would require about 20 billion of the local currency. Zhao Yong was slightly taken aback, not because he thought it was expensive, but rather because it was much lower than he had anticipated. It should be noted that Su Chun was about to build a nuclear-powered warship comparable to a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier, weighing 100,000 tons. The cost of the Ford-class nuclear-powered super aircraft carrier is as high as $13.5 billion US dollars, which translates to over 50 billion in local currency. Although Su Chin's warship was not an aircraft carrier, its combat capability would certainly not be inferior to that of an aircraft carrier. Without hesitation, Zhao Yong immediately made a decision. No problem, I will report the budget to the higher-ups. Meanwhile, in the Middle Eastern region, within the palace of the Oil King. At this time, representatives from several desert countries were holding a joint meeting. The tense atmosphere felt like a chain tightly binding the hearts of the representatives from several important desert nations. Not long ago, the air force of a certain country launched a surprise attack on them. The air raid was fierce and left them with no means to retaliate. Before the attack began, their radar systems were almost blind, unable to detect the enemy aircraft, and they were caught off guard by a series of strikes. The targets hit were critical facilities of their nation. The representative from Pyramid Country angrily slammed the conference table. These damned guys. If they dare to attack our country again, we will definitely declare war on them. The other representatives also showed uncontrollable anger, with thoughts of declaring war on the other side. However, just thinking about the opposing air force made their mood heavy. At this moment, the representative from Paris Country said, the country backing the attackers is likely another major power. If I'm not mistaken, they must have received some 5th-generation fighter jets from them. With our radar detection capabilities, we cannot detect these stealth fighters at all. Even if we declared war on them, given our military strength, we would struggle to counter them. Everyone sighed helplessly. As long as that major power was involved, they had no way to respond. While everyone was feeling a mix of emotions and didn't know what to do, the Prince of Oil Country, Ode Biao, suddenly spoke up. In response to the air defense operations against the attackers, our oil country can take the lead. His gaze was firm and his voice serious. But as soon as he said this, the representatives from other countries were left stunned. They stared at Ode Biao in disbelief, thinking, Oil Country actually wants to take the lead? Have they gone mad? Chapter 93, Father-Son Plan. Oil Country really has gone mad. They actually volunteered to take the lead. The representatives from several countries in the Middle East looked at Ode Biao in astonishment. Oil Country is indeed very wealthy. They possess several world-class oil fields, and the oil they produce is of high quality. Their resources are abundant, with black gold continuously flowing from the ground, bringing them unimaginable wealth. It is an undeniable fact that Oil Country is rich. With their unique wealth, they can easily purchase the most advanced weapons and equipment on the international market. From high-performance fighter jets to powerful missile systems, from advanced tanks to sophisticated electronic warfare equipment, Oil Country's arsenal is truly impressive. Each of these advanced weapons represents the forefront of military technology in today's world, and their existence gives Oil Country a certain degree of military deterrence. After all, even the most advanced DF-series missiles from another country are present in their inventory. However, advanced weapons are only effective in the hands of skilled users. The military of Oil Country has long been criticized as a poorly trained force. Their soldiers, having lived in comfortable environments for too long, lack rigorous training and practical combat experience. In daily military training, there is a tendency to go through the motions without truly enhancing combat skills and tactical proficiency to the required level. Moreover, the cultural and social environment of this region leads to a lack of fighting spirit among soldiers, who are missing the drive to fight bravely for their country and people, unafraid of sacrifice. In short, even if they are provided with advanced weapons, it is difficult to unleash the true combat potential of these weapons. Representatives from several nations looked at Ode Biao with skepticism, but he remained remarkably calm, unexpectedly calm. The representative from the Pyramid Nation couldn't hold back. Prince Ode Biao, are you serious? Do you really intend to have your soldiers serve as the main force? Under the doubtful gazes of the crowd, Ode Biao decisively nodded. That's right. The crowd erupted in disbelief. The representative from Paris was stunned. Have you also received support from a certain powerful country? Otherwise, why such confidence? After all, that country possesses the world's most powerful military force and the most advanced military technology. If they are backing you, the oil nation might indeed have a chance in anti-air operations. Of course, even if the backing was from that country, it wouldn't prevent them from supporting the oil nation. After all, playing both sides has long been a basic operation for them. However, Ode Biao shook his head in response to their speculations. The representatives instantly could not contain themselves. Without support from that powerful nation, how could you fight? In their understanding, without strong external backing, the oil nation simply could not compete against formidable enemies on its own. They were puzzled about where the oil nation found the courage to take on the 5th-generation fighters of the other nation head-on, especially since reports indicated that the 5th-generation fighters purchased from that country were numerous, at least 20. That was nearly the size of 2 fighter squadrons. The representative from the Pyramid Nation couldn't help but say, Prince Ode Biao, we understand that you are young and exuberant, and we can forgive your bravado. But war is no child's play. It would be better for you to fund us and leave the fighting to us. Representatives from other nations nodded in agreement. I think the representative from the Pyramid Nation has a point. It would be even better if you could hand over those advanced weapons to us. Our soldiers have been through many battles and are strong warriors. With your funding and weapon support, we can definitely redeem our honor. Please consider this carefully, Prince Odubio. Odubio, in a fit of anger, stood up and turned to leave, unwilling to explain himself to them. Watching his retreating figure, the crowd was left in confusion. The representative from the Pyramid Nation uttered in disbelief. So, are you funding us or not? They never expected to be underestimated by these people. Did they really think of them as mere fools with money? Just wait. During this anti-air operation, I will make sure this group gets a good lesson. Odubio thought to himself as he made his way to the royal palace. King Odbao is a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Besides his luxurious demeanor, he has a very kind appearance. For Odbao, this man is indeed a loving father and someone he trusts greatly. Odbao enters the palace, where the king is waiting for him. Hey, what do those guys mean? Are they agreeing to cooperate with us and let us take the lead? As Odbao approaches, the king, unable to wait, immediately asks. Odbao shakes his head and replies helplessly, Father, just as you thought, those guys are only focused on our money. I proposed that we take the lead, but they rejected us. They even mocked our warriors, saying they are inferior to theirs. If that's the case, let them go and face their fate. Hearing Odubio's words, the king furrows his brows in displeasure. He nods and says, as expected, these guys really only want us to fund them. However, we don't need to worry. We have our own airfield. The combat mechs we purchased from the Dragon Kingdom have already arrived in our country. We don't need to worry about them. Speaking of mechs, the king of the oil nation can't help but feel excited. When Odbao spent hundreds of billions to acquire those mechs, he was almost furious. 300 billion is no small amount for them. But after Odbao showed him their capabilities, he realized how impressive these weapons are. It's like bringing future sci-fi into reality. He even thought Odbao bought too few. Now, the oil nation possesses two powerful national defense weapons. One is the DF series missiles, and the other is the individual combat mechs. Indeed, both are advanced weapons. So, father, when shall we take action? Odbao asks again. The king chuckles lightly, sits back in his chair, crosses his legs, and leisurely says, no need to rush. Since they want to let us take the lead, let them fight it out first. Once they start, we will step in. At that time, we can clean up the mess and turn the tide, thus gaining greater benefits. Chapter 94, The tension mounts. In the vast desert, the sun hangs high, and the golden sands roll endlessly, resembling a mysterious domain without end. At this moment, every nation is on edge. On the evening of the conference, the intelligence department of the Pyramid Nation receives crucial information. The enemy is preparing to launch a second airstrike against them. This information is urgent and vital. They suspect that after successfully conducting the first airstrike, the enemy would indeed launch a second one, but they didn't expect it to come so quickly. They've tasted the sweetness of using advanced aircraft for airstrikes. The high-ranking officials of the Pyramid Nation immediately report this important news to the coalition forces. Damn it. The enemy thinks just because they have advanced weapons, we would be afraid of them. After hearing the news, the high-ranking officials in the capital were furious, slamming their fists on the conference table. They had been hesitating about whether to form a coalition to conduct counter-air operations against the adversary. Out of a sense of luck, they believed that after the first airstrike, the adversary might not launch a second one. Now, that notion was completely shattered. They could no longer afford to hesitate. At this point, they had no choice but to fight back. The Desert Alliance in the Middle East was established. The next day, various nations dispatched troops for support. The Pyramid Nation, an ancient and mysterious country, demonstrated unwavering determination during this crisis. Inside the military base, the atmosphere was tense and solemn. Ground crew members were busily moving about, making final checks and preparations for the MiG-31 fighter jets, which were about to be deployed. These MiG-31 stood quietly on the runway like steel behemoths, exuding a powerful deterrent force. Their sleek bodies, painted in silver gray, shimmered coldly in the sunlight. Each aircraft had undergone meticulous maintenance and adjustments to ensure there would be no issues during combat. As an all-weather heavy interceptor, the MiG-31 excelled in speed, high-altitude performance, and radar systems, although it was relatively weaker in maneuverability and low-altitude performance. Nonetheless, it met the standards of a fourth-generation fighter. For this operation, the Pyramid Nation deployed 8 MiG-31s to join other countries in launching counter-air operations. Other nations also contributed several aircraft, including more than a dozen F-16s and even J-10 fighters purchased from a neighboring country. However, compared to the fourth-generation MiG-31, both the F-16 and J-10 were third-generation fighters, with significant performance differences. In total, the coalition assembled over 70 aircraft of various models, with the Pyramid Nation contributing 8 fourth-generation fighters and their high-ranking General Muller, a capable military strategist, appointed as the commander of the joint force against the adversary. The operation was set in motion. Although some, like General Ode, continued to voice opposition, no one paid attention to his remarks. The aircraft from various countries took off one after another, heading to the designated assembly point, where they finally gathered together. Over 70 aircraft were neatly arranged at a large airport. The different models of fighters intertwined, creating a spectacular sight at first glance. Some high-ranking officials couldn't help but feel excited, filled with confidence for the upcoming counter-air operations. One even suggested, why not launch an airstrike directly on the adversary's homeland? An eye for an eye, what do you think? Others agreed, realizing that more than 70 aircraft could pose a significant threat to the adversary's territory. The thought of revenge stirred their blood. Calm down with your excitement. General Mueller's voice suddenly rang out. His gaze was serious, fixed on these individuals, and he calmly said, "Do you really think the opponent's defense system is a joke? Over the years, in our conflicts with the opposing forces, we have launched numerous missiles at them, and all of them were intercepted. Now, after much effort, we have finally assembled 3 Air Force squadrons. And you still think about attacking their homeland? Are you not afraid that these aircraft may not return? If we cannot intercept their airstrikes and our formation is lost, will you be satisfied then?" General Mueller's words left these individuals speechless. They had indeed lost sight of their true mission. For a moment, they had become overly confident and forgotten their actual objectives. This is why a rational military strategist is needed as a commander on the battlefield. At critical moments, they can crush immature ideas in their infancy. Thus, intercepting the opponent's airstrikes became the primary objective of this mission. Under Mueller's command, the 3 Air Force squadrons began to take off. Mueller and the senior coalition leaders sat in the command room, facing a large display screen that showed the positions and statuses of various aircraft. Mueller's brow was furrowed, his heart filled with worry. This combat mission was daunting. We must maintain a high level of vigilance and coordination, or the consequences would be unimaginable. He spoke through the communication system to all pilots. The pilots were also aware of the challenges of this mission, especially those flying third-generation aircraft. They knew what awaited them ahead. Fifth-generation aircraft equipped with advanced technologies. It was impossible not to feel fear, but they still pressed on. The combat formation of 70 aircraft advanced like a massive steel army, moving grandly through the sky toward the opposing forces. The sunlight reflected off the wings of the aircraft, creating a dazzling glow. On the opposing side, the commander was an elderly man with graying hair named Stanford. In his territory, he was a pillar of strength, protecting the land with his powerful tactical deployment skills. His hawk-like nose gave him an exceptionally sharp gaze, occasionally flashing with a piercing light. At that moment, General Stanford was discussing the upcoming airstrike plans with his subordinates. "General, our intelligence department has received news that several desert countries, including Pyramid Nation, Oil Nation, and Paris Nung, seem to have united." General Stanford nodded. "It's normal for these countries to unite against us. However, we now have the most advanced 5th-generation aircraft. They wouldn't dare to provoke us." Just as he finished speaking, the radar station's alarm suddenly went off. "General Stanford, our radar has detected 3 Air Force squadrons heading toward us. There are a total of 72 aircraft." General Stanford stood up abruptly. His eyes flashed with surprise. But then that look turned exceptionally fierce. He squinted slightly and said, "Let them come and not return." The actions of the desert nations were swift and caught the general by surprise. He had originally thought that these countries were intimidated, but now he realized they were anything but. Instead, they were coming in strong. This infuriated the general, who was preparing for a second airstrike, and he swore to make sure these aircraft would not return. Their response was equally rapid. Soon, a squadron of fighter jets of the same scale took off, heading towards the approaching coalition. All these aircraft were F-16 fighters. They operated in formations of 24 jets, deploying a total of 3 formations. Since the models were the same and their performance was basically consistent, it allowed for better command without the need to confirm whether each aircraft could complete the assigned tasks, saving the commander a lot of thinking time. "General, shouldn't we deploy our newly acquired advanced fighters?" asked an Air Force officer under his command. "I guarantee that with these jets, we can quickly annihilate the enemy." After the previous airstrikes, the F-35 had fully demonstrated its power. This made many high-ranking Air Force officials quite fond of the aircraft, even sparking a trend of thoughts about Air Force dominance. General Liu Qingji had similar thoughts after witnessing the mechs produced by Su Chun, leading him to write an article overnight on the topic of mech dominance in warfare. Both sides were impressed by the powerful and advanced technology, which led to such ideas. However, the general dismissed his subordinate's suggestion. "Do you think we would deploy a mere 70 dilapidated aircraft to engage our 5th-generation fighters? We need to save them for future airstrikes. Once we annihilate their coalition, you can imagine the look on their faces when we strike them." A cold smile flashed across the general's face. His subordinate was momentarily stunned by this idea. Still, he expressed some concern. "But our aircraft are not much different from those of the enemy coalition. They are all 3rd-generation fighters, and according to reports from the front, the enemy still has several 4th-generation aircraft produced by a certain country." The general scoffed at this. "Do you think the enemy's pilots can compare to ours? We are surrounded on all sides. And the pilots we have trained in combat are the cream of the crop. Dealing with these guys will be a piece of cake. Besides, I never said we had no other preparations. Let's bring out the 2 electronic warfare aircraft we purchased and let them see the light of day." Upon hearing this, his subordinate's eyes lit up. "Aren't those your prized possessions? You didn't even want to use them in the previous airstrikes." The general chuckled lightly. "In the previous airstrikes, we already deployed 5th-generation fighters. If we deploy electronic warfare aircraft now, it would truly be a dimension-reducing strike. We can't push them too hard. Otherwise, domestic terrorist incidents will increase." His subordinate nodded. As expected of General Stanford, your thinking is quite thorough. Soon, the 2 electronic warfare aircraft soared into the sky, following the main force. Both sides' aircraft engaged in aerial combat. As mentioned by a certain expert, as soon as they clashed, several enemy planes were shot down. These aircraft were caught off guard and were hit by stray bullets, instantly igniting into flames. Some had no choice but to eject and escape. Others were directly hit in the fuel tanks, leaving no chance to flee. As the battle progressed, the coalition forces suffered increasing losses. In contrast, the opposing side was composed entirely of elite pilots, seasoned through repeated trials on the battlefield, demonstrating exceptional flying skills. Even with over 100 aircraft in the sky, they handled the situation with ease. The loss ratio reached a terrifying 1-5. This was an alarming figure for the coalition's high-ranking officials. The Air Force, comprised of various models of aircraft, turned out to be so vulnerable. Their side lost over 10 aircraft, while the enemy barely managed to shoot down 2. Why? What was the reason? Why was our Air Force so inadequate? In such a short time, 13 aircraft had been shot down. At this rate, our Air Force formations would be completely wiped out within a day. The opposing side hadn't even deployed their advanced fighters. While we still had several fourth-generation aircraft that significantly outperformed their counterparts, yet we were still no match. The coalition forces felt particularly distressed, as among the losses were even a fourth-generation aircraft. At this moment, a sense of despair filled the conference room. On the other side, the mood was quite the opposite. The opposing side was very pleased. A certain general quietly watched the radar screen, leisurely sipping coffee. It seemed like they were not at war, but rather enjoying leisure time. General, my subordinates are preparing a celebration banquet tonight to celebrate our significant victory over the coalition's Air Force. The general calmly smiled. Of course, I will bring a bottle of rare champagne. Everyone cheered. However, before that, the general continued. It's time for a new round of attacks. The bomber squadron can take action. This time our target is the largest refugee area in a certain region. Some subordinates were puzzled. General, why here? The general looked at the map, sneering. Because this is the place where hatred is the strongest. Once hatred finds a way to release, it becomes a significant threat. I need to help them extinguish the flames. His subordinates wore proud smiles, their expressions almost ghostly. However, at that moment, a radar technician suddenly spoke up, breaking the joyful atmosphere. General, we have one aircraft down. Upon hearing this, the general merely nodded calmly, showing little reaction. Losing an aircraft was a normal occurrence. The opposing coalition also had elite pilots. But what the radar technician said next made the general a bit uneasy. The technician pointed at the radar system, looking astonished. In general, there are no signals on our radar at all. In other words, we have no idea who shot down our aircraft. How is that possible? Stanford stepped forward and carefully examined the radar system, and indeed found that what the staff member had said was true. Their aircraft had been shot down, and there was absolutely no feedback signal. What is going on? Is the radar system malfunctioning? Chapter 96. The coalition forces suffered heavy losses and are powerless to turn the tide. The battle continues to escalate. The sky over the desert is filled with missile trails and explosions. Missiles fly through the air, emitting sharp whistling sounds. Some missiles are successfully intercepted and explode in the air, forming huge fireballs. Others break through the defenses, hitting their targets and causing violent explosions. The smoke and flames create a grim picture of war. As the battle progresses, the coalition forces suffer severe losses. Over 70 aircraft remain. Now only about 30 are left. On the opposing side, nearly 10 aircraft have also been lost. At this moment, they are encircling the remaining coalition aircraft. General Muller realizes that this cannot continue. At this rate, the coalition will surely be completely annihilated in the sky. He decides to abandon the maneuvering and head to the airport to eliminate the enemy's bomber units. Initially, he thought about engaging with the opposing air force, but now he realizes how vulnerable they are. If the battle continues, the mission to counter the airstrike will be compromised, and an entire squadron of aircraft could be lost. When these pilots hear Muller's orders, they quickly begin to regroup. The remaining aircraft head towards the bomber units mentioned in the intelligence. The opposing aircraft pursue from behind. Since they are all third-generation fighters, their speed is not very fast, especially since there are still several fourth-generation fighters remaining on the coalition side. Both sides stage a dramatic aerial chase. The number of opposing aircraft still holds an advantage, unleashing a dense barrage of fire, and during the pursuit, they take down several more aircraft. However, they have successfully arrived at the target location and spotted the airport ahead. A fourth-generation pilot finally shows a slight smile on his serious face. Headquarters, we have arrived at the target location. Headquarters. Headquarters? Strange. Why can't the communication connect to headquarters? He tries to connect with other teammates again, only to find that the communication seems to have malfunctioned. It has lost functionality. Not just him, but other aircraft are experiencing the same issue. Now these pilots are completely bewildered. Losing communication makes them feel like isolated islands in a vast ocean. Their combat effectiveness has suddenly dropped to the level of World War II, or even pre-World War II. Meanwhile, at the target location, the opposing air defense units have also taken action. Missiles suddenly launch one after another. Like blades in the darkness, they strike with lethal precision. In an instant, one aircraft is blown to pieces. The sudden explosion startles the other pilots. What terrifies them even more is that these missiles appeared without any warning. This also means that the early warning systems on their aircraft have failed at this moment. The pilots aboard suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Is it an electromagnetic interference device? How could they have such a powerful device over there? Communications were cut off, and there was chaos on the radar. At this rate, they would be unable to complete their mission. It must be that some powerful equipment was provided to them by a major power. How despicable. Just a puppet surviving by depending on a superpower. The pilots were bewildered. Without radar and communications, and with the early warning systems also malfunctioning, the ensuing battle was extremely unfavorable for them. Meanwhile, at the ground command center, Commander, we cannot reach our pilots. It seems the enemy has cut off our communications, said the communication officer. His words left the high-ranking officials present in shock. Not a single aircraft can be contacted? Mueller asked in disbelief. The officer nodded. Yes. Not a single one can be reached. All communications and radar are down. Mueller looked up at the sky, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief. His hand slowly tightened into a fist, veins bulging on his forehead. A complex emotion he could hardly describe lingered in his heart. The expressions of the high-ranking officials were also unusually grave. They were already at a disadvantage, and now that they had finally broken through the encirclement and reached their destination, before they could even strike, all radar and communications had failed. They knew what a failure of radar and communications meant. It was like fighting with one's eyes closed. An official from Paris exclaimed in anger. I don't believe they have such capabilities. It must be that some powerful weapons were provided to them. I heard that they possess a type of electronic warfare aircraft capable of incapacitating radar and communications. This aircraft has a strong disruptive effect on aircraft below the 5th generation, capable of paralyzing an entire formation. They must have obtained such a formidable electronic warfare aircraft. Originally, I was somewhat relieved that they did not deploy 5th generation aircraft. Now I realize that was premature. Their electronic warfare aircraft pose a threat to us comparable to 5th generation fighters. After all, electromagnetic interference cannot completely sever this connection. From the intermittent fluctuations on the radar, it's clear that the number of operational aircraft is dwindling. At this rate, it's only a matter of time before they are completely annihilated. Mueller slumped helplessly in his seat, his gaze gradually becoming vacant. The other high-ranking officials also sighed in resignation, realizing that there was no way to turn the tide. What should we do now? Someone looked at Mueller. In the face of absolute technical superiority, no one blamed Mueller, the Allied commander, for the failure in command. Because had it been them, they might not have handled it better. All eyes turned to General Mueller, and after a long pause, he slowly spoke. Prepare the ground defenses. Prevent them from taking this opportunity to launch a new round of airstrikes against us. The high-ranking officials from Paris inquired. Do we need to reorganize our aircraft for support? Other senior officials expressed their views. I think it's necessary, otherwise what will happen to those aircraft we've lost? New grudges added to old ones. Let's fight back. Mueller dismissed their irrational thoughts. Fight? What do we have to fight with? Until we resolve the interference devices over there, it doesn't matter how many aircraft we send out. In the end, it's just a death sentence. His words reminded everyone. The opponent's electronic jamming equipment hung over them like the sword of Damocles, posing a fatal threat. A sense of despair filled the conference room, except for Ode Biao. As he saw the coalition's aircraft being nearly wiped out, he couldn't help but sneer. We gave you a chance. If we had taken the lead, wouldn't everything have been fine? Unfortunately, you couldn't handle it when given the opportunity. So don't blame us. Realizing this, Ode Biao understood it was time for his combat squadron to take action. Chapter 97, Mecha Squadron, Launch. At the military base of the oil-rich nations, the atmosphere was tense and solemn. These individual combat mechas stood quietly, exuding a powerful deterrent force. Their unique design featured smooth and robust lines, brimming with futuristic technology. These were individual combat mechas from a certain country. Each mecha had undergone meticulous tuning and inspection to ensure maximum performance in battle. Watching these armed warriors, Ode Biao felt an unusual excitement. Although they had wealth, they were not respected by other desert nations, who regarded them as prime targets. Everyone wanted a bite. This time, he vowed to show these nations that their warriors could also uphold the banner of anti-aircraft operations. The king was also present and seemed somewhat worried. Xiao Biao. I've heard that support from a certain country has sent several electronic warfare aircraft that can interfere. What if they disrupt our mechas? Ode Biao scoffed. Our big brother has assured us in their commitments that they will help us resist electromagnetic interference. They guaranteed me that the individual combat mechas have strong anti-jamming capabilities. Let's wait and see. He then immediately issued the order to launch. With a command from Ode Biao, blue flames erupted from beneath the warriors' feet. After about 3 seconds, the flames intensified, and their speed reached an unimaginable level. They soared into the sky, heading straight for their target. Ode Biao was thrilled. If it weren't for the king's disagreement, he would have wanted to don the individual combat mecha armor himself. What originally required an hour of flight time took less than 10 minutes for all the mechas to reach the designated area. Reporting to headquarters. We have arrived at the specified location. All systems, including signals, communications, and radar, are functioning normally. Hearing the voice of the warrior through the communication device, it was as clear as if they were speaking face to face. The king's eyes widened. At this moment, the mechas had entered the affected range. However, based on their current performance, they seemed completely unaffected. The factor of electronic warfare in future conflicts cannot be ignored. The individual combat mechs developed by a certain nation feature multiple electronic protections. These protective measures include advanced electronic jamming shielding systems, electromagnetic protection layers, and anti-jamming communication devices. The king remarked incredulously, they really aren't affected at all. The technology from this nation is indeed advanced. Even the interference devices from a certain country can't penetrate it. Although Ode Biao had already believed in this nation before, seeing the mech completely unaffected now surprised him a bit. Of course, rather than surprise, it was more excitement. Let the harvest begin, my warriors. He continued to order. Meanwhile, the coalition's aircraft formation was completely obliterated. With their electronic jamming devices, attacking the coalition's aircraft was as easy as shooting at a target. It could almost be described as a casual slaughter. Haha, I've shot down 3 aircraft already. These guys are really easy to take down. Easier than ever. You've only shot down 3. I've taken down 5. I shot down 2 MiG-31s and blew up one of their fuel tanks. The pilot was blown to pieces right before my eyes. What a pity. They sent too few MiG-31s. There aren't enough for us to shoot down. Send more formidable ones for us to take out. Yeah, I'm not done having fun yet. The pilots of the team were currently boasting about the aircraft they had shot down in the channel. Just as the excitement was building, a serious voice was heard. Return to base, elite pilots. It was General Stanford speaking. His voice was steady and powerful, filled with the confidence of victory. Hearing his order, the pilots reluctantly began their return. They seemed somewhat unsatisfied. I'm itching to shoot some more, teammates. Who wants to let me take a couple more shots? A young pilot's voice rang out in the channel. It was his first time participating in actual combat, always following behind the main force to reap the rewards. And at this moment, his confidence was unusually inflated. Cut it out. There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. The squadron leader's voice replied. The young pilot grinned widely. Next time, I will definitely be at the front. Those guys will be scared when they see me. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became, as if he was destined to become the next ace pilot of his team, filled with confidence about the future. However, this confidence did not last long. His aircraft seemed to be locked onto by something. The warning alarms suddenly blared. He was taken aback, still unsure of what was happening. Boom! The aircraft suddenly exploded. Before he could react, the young pilot found himself plunged into chaos. The warning alarms were not just sounding for him. All aircraft were alerted simultaneously. They were equally bewildered. Then they saw the pilot who had been boasting about being at the front next time, blown up along with his aircraft. This sudden turn of events shocked everyone. The key point is that they don't even know who attacked them. The radar showed no response at all. Just when they thought their radar had malfunctioned, boom, boom, boom. Explosions erupted one after another, like fiery roses blooming among them. Each bloom was accompanied by intense explosions and loud noises. Before they could react, more than a dozen aircraft were shot down. At this point, everyone was completely stunned. This was their airspace. They even had the illusion that it might be missiles fired from their own side. However, even if it were their own missiles, there should be some indication on the radar. But now, the radar seemed to have malfunctioned. They stared intently at the radar, trying to confirm if it was indeed malfunctioning. Suddenly, a light spot flickered on the radar, instantly alerting them. This light spot seemed to represent some kind of signal, but it appeared for less than a second. Immediately after, 2 massive explosions occurred. This time, unlike before, the electronic warfare aircraft that had played a significant role in this conflict were all destroyed. The destruction of the electronic warfare aircraft was equivalent to taking out 2 fifth-generation fighters. Now these guys completely lost their composure. Everyone panicked. Chapter 98, Prince Odibiang. Are you joking? In the command center of the nation, the atmosphere was quite harmonious. Some staff members even took off their shirts and danced the belly dance to celebrate the upcoming victory. The combat effectiveness of those coalition forces in the desert is truly weak. I thought they would be formidable, but unexpectedly, with just a casual move from us, we wiped out their entire army. Honestly, I feel like we don't even need to call our General Stanford to command this. Those coalition guys can't even muster a single aircraft model. I could do it too. I can already imagine the expressions of the coalition commanders crying indoors, but unfortunately, we can't see it with our own eyes. What a pity. I suggest we post our celebration photos online later. Let those guys take a look. Ha ha ha. This wave is called killing with a heart strike. The radar observer in the command center was about to take off his headset and join the celebration. However, just as he was about to finish his last tasks, he suddenly noticed that several light spots had inexplicably disappeared from the radar. His heart skipped a beat, and he quickly looked at General Stanford, who was getting up to greet the returning pilots. He urgently called out, "General, please look, something seems off." The radar observer pointed to the radar screen beside him, indicating Stanford to take a look. The latter turned around, frowned, and muttered dismissively, "The battle is over. What else is there to see? Surely the coalition isn't sending over more aircraft to attack us again?" However, when he approached the radar screen and saw the situation clearly, he was instantly stunned. The lights above continued to flicker, and each flicker signified that a fighter jet had been destroyed. In just a short period, nearly 10 aircraft had already been lost. Stanford's pupils dilated sharply, and the ease in his expression vanished, replaced by a look of astonishment as if he had seen a ghost. What on earth was happening? Why were our aircraft being shot down one after another? Moreover, there were no enemy jets appearing on the radar. What was going on? He quickly picked up the microphone to contact the troops on the front line. However, he suddenly found that communication had been cut off. No matter how they adjusted it, they could not reach the front line. This was the first time Stanford had encountered such a situation. But years of command experience had honed his skills, and he knew he must not panic at this moment. Just then, another 5 jets disappeared from the radar. Earlier, Stanford had worried that the coalition forces had deployed 5th-generation fighters, as only they could achieve stealth on their radar. But now, that assumption seemed unreliable. The efficiency of this destruction was such that even if 5th-generation fighters were present, it wouldn't matter. Unless the opposing side had sent a significant number of 5th-generation fighters to the battlefield, there would need to be at least over 100 to take out several of their jets in the blink of an eye. And those pilots would have to be elite as well. Could it be that our electronic warfare aircraft malfunctioned, interfering with our own jet's radar signals? An expert from the Equipment Research Center happened to be in the command room at that moment. He raised this question. Upon hearing him, everyone realized that it indeed could be this reason. They were about to finish their combat preparations when they suddenly encountered this problem. Unless the enemy's air support was incredibly fast, faster than 5th-generation jets, it was impossible to achieve such a rapid destruction of their aircraft, eliminating all improbable factors. That last reason, no matter how unlikely it seemed, was the only correct answer. Stanford secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He believed this was the cause. But just then, the radar observer's words made him lose all hope. He glanced at the radar screen and, somewhat incredulously, said, "General, it seems our electronic warfare aircraft have also been shot down, and it's 2 of them. Both have been destroyed." Upon hearing this, the high-ranking officials present were wide-eyed, struggling to accept the news. Our electronic warfare aircraft have been shot down? How is that possible? How did the coalition manage to do this? I really feel the pain. The cost of those 2 electronic warfare aircraft could equip an entire squadron of 4th-generation fighters, and now they were gone. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. They might be able to shoot down other aircraft, but with the speed and maneuverability of electronic warfare aircraft, how could they not evade the enemy's pursuit? How could both be shot down? Stanford's whole body trembled. At this point, the number of downed aircraft had already reached 20. If this continued, he would truly be on the brink of despair. He commanded with a trembling voice, "At all costs, let our aircraft retreat." In fact, these aircraft were already preparing to return. They encountered a sudden situation, one that they could not handle. Retreating was almost instinctive for them. Therefore, there was no need to issue a command. They were already on their way back. Seeing these aircraft desperately fleeing, the mech squadron also launched a pursuit. The hunt had just begun. In the desert, inside the coalition command room, a group of people was furious. "What do you think we should do now?" "The more I think about it, the angrier I get. Not only have we lost over 70 aircraft, but our pilots have also been ruthlessly killed. Why not organize a suicide squad to carry out some attacks on their homeland? A small-scale attack would only make them think we've backed down. I suggest we directly send soldiers to invade their territory. The most important thing now is how to respond to their airstrikes. We have already lost 3 squadrons. If we face another airstrike, I don't know what to say. How about we send out some aircraft for an interception?" Upon hearing the suggestion to redeploy aircraft for interception, the other representatives immediately fell silent. They didn't want to send out aircraft for interception, mainly because, given the current situation, sending any aircraft would be tantamount to sending them to their doom. Mueller, seeing their desire to intercept, slammed the table and shouted, "Intercept! Intercept! Always thinking about interception. We have already paid a considerable price to prove that interception is of little use. It is a waste and a desecration of the pilots' lives. We should increase ground defenses to withstand the enemy. Otherwise, we will not be able to bear their retaliation. Don't forget, their 5th-generation aircraft haven't even been deployed yet." Everyone's hearts sank at that moment. They suddenly remembered that the enemy's main force had not yet made a move. Once they did, the subsequent retaliation would indeed be unbearable. They instinctively looked at the radar screen, at the surviving aircraft from their side, wanting to assess the enemy's air power. At that moment, their expressions suddenly changed. Some high-ranking officials even rubbed their eyes, thinking they had seen it wrong. After rubbing a few times, they realized they had not made a mistake. They saw the dots representing the enemy's aircraft on the radar, which had previously been densely packed with dozens of them, suddenly disappeared in large numbers. What just happened? Why did the enemy's aircraft decrease so much? Yes, their aircraft are all 3rd-generation models. They can't hide from our radar scans. So what is going on? Didn't they have over 50 aircraft left before? Why are there only 20-something now? Did they all fly back to base? That's impossible. They couldn't have returned so quickly. It's only been a few minutes since our aircraft were wiped out. So what exactly happened? At this moment, General Mueller conducted a thorough analysis and finally concluded, "If I'm not mistaken, someone launched a surprise attack on the forces after our aircraft were annihilated." Upon hearing this, everyone was momentarily taken aback, and then they reacted, realizing that this seemed to be the only explanation. But who could it be? Just as everyone furrowed their brows in thought, a loud and aggressive voice suddenly echoed through the room. It was from our oil-rich nation. Prince ODBU stepped forward and said loudly. As soon as he spoke, everyone's gaze turned sharply towards him. Everyone was stunned. "Oil-rich nation, are you kidding?" A senior executive from Paris, who was drinking water, happened to hear ODBU's remark. Finding it too amusing, he choked and spat the water out. "You're killing me. Prince ODBU, you need to prepare a script for your boasting. With the combat capability of your soldiers, how can you even say that? Don't you have any self-awareness? In some localized conflicts, you've had soldiers fleeing the scene, abandoning their gear, and you dare to claim that you eliminated those aircraft? Who was it that was well-equipped but faced setbacks against local armed groups and ended up being humiliated by simple missiles and drones? I want to even mention that. These remarks made ODBU feel a bit embarrassed. His face turned hot with shame. If what they said were false, ODBU wouldn't feel this way. But they were stating facts. It was true that in small-scale conflicts, some soldiers had turned into deserters. It was also true that despite having many well-equipped weapons, they were beaten down by rudimentary arms. Reflecting on past performances, even he, as a prince, felt a bit ashamed. This was also why ODBU was eager to prove himself. Seeing that the mocking voices had diminished, he cleared his throat and said seriously, "You are talking about the past. But a gentleman from the Dragon Nation once said that we should look at issues with a developmental perspective. Our oil-rich nation has developed. And we are not what we used to be. I am here to tell you seriously that it was indeed our oil-rich nation that launched an attack on the forces, and the methods were extremely brutal." As he spoke, ODBU clenched his fists tightly, as if the forces were trapped within them. The frontline communication has been restored? A voice suddenly interrupted ODBU. Everyone disregarded what he had just said and hurried to the communication station. General Muller picked up the microphone and urgently shouted, "This is the Coalition Command. What is happening on the front line? We have detected that most of the forces have disappeared from the radar. Have aircraft from other nations engaged them?" The frontline commander reported the situation to headquarters. Reporting to command, it was indeed the action of other nations. After our fighter formation was shot down, the forces were preparing to return when they encountered an enemy attack, suffering heavy losses. It is estimated that more than 20 aircraft have already been shot down. Upon hearing this, everyone in the command room became excited. It was actually true. The forces had indeed been attacked, and in just a short period of time, more than 20 aircraft had already been lost. The combat efficiency was beyond simply astonishing. It could only be described as terrifying. Quite terrifying. Great. This is wonderful. Regardless of who launched the attack, seeing the forces in trouble makes me happy. It would be even better if they could be completely taken down there. Even if we failed to intercept and lost an entire formation of aircraft, it would still be worth it. With such high combat efficiency, even if fifth-generation fighters were deployed, the numbers would definitely not be small. The airspace above the forces must be engaged in an aerial battle right now. At this moment, Muller was also questioning whether it was fifth-generation fighters, because only the stealth capabilities of fifth-generation fighters could quietly shoot down the opponent's aircraft in such situations. He relayed his speculation to the front lines. However, the response he received was, "Report to the command. The combat altitude of both sides has exceeded our visual range. We can only confirm that they are not aircraft, but rather unidentified flying objects that are much smaller than aircraft. Currently, the forces' aircraft are being pursued by these unidentified flying objects. Moreover, these unidentified flying objects have formidable combat capabilities. Just a few of them easily shot down dozens of aircraft. And their combat efficiency is astonishing. Unidentified flying objects? In the conference room, everyone was left stunned. Not aircraft, but unidentified flying objects that are much smaller? What is going on? What kind of unidentified flying objects could possess such strong combat power? Could they be extraterrestrials? Are extraterrestrials intervening to help us against the forces in the Middle East? How could it possibly be aliens? There are no extraterrestrials in this world. Muller interrupted their wild speculations. At this moment, ODBO spoke again. "I agree with General Muller. It definitely cannot be the work of extraterrestrials." Everyone turned to ODBO, curious to hear his thoughts as he seemed to have a clear understanding of the situation. So who could it be? Seeing that everyone's attention was on him, ODBO quickly responded. "As I mentioned earlier, it is the attack we launched against the forces. Those unidentified flying objects are our individual combat mechs. Even when facing dozens of fifth-generation fighters, they are powerful technological products that can handle it." Upon hearing his words, everyone was once again stunned. ODBO thought to himself, "Now you should all believe it." General Muller slowly spoke. "I take back what I said earlier. I feel that the possibility of it being extraterrestrials is greater than that of oil-rich nations being involved." Hearing this, the high-ranking officials of the coalition could no longer contain themselves and burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. General Muller would rather believe it was aliens than oil-rich countries. Sigh. "Prince Ode, we really don't want to strike at you, but don't you understand the level of your own military? And what else with those individual combat mechs? Did you watch too many sci-fi movies last night and get carried away? Prince Ode, you should really go back and rest. I feel like something's off with your mental state. You can't even distinguish between dreams and reality." Ode's mouth twitched in disbelief. "Don't believe me? You still don't trust me? Do I have to arrange for the mechs to appear in front of you for you to believe it?" He was about to say something, but then realized he had been left out by these people. Muller spoke to the frontline commander on the other end of the line. "Keep collecting relevant intelligence. Report to us immediately with any new findings." After giving his instructions, Muller hung up the phone. He then shared his thoughts. "These unidentified flying objects definitely aren't products of the countries in our region. We couldn't possibly manufacture such advanced weapons. It must be from the West or from those with powerful research capabilities. What do you think?" The senior coalition officials began to discuss seriously. "I feel that the combat capability of these unidentified flying objects should be above that of fifth-generation fighters. Could something even more powerful than fifth-generation fighters have been made by them? The Allies are just their subordinates. Why would they attack their own subordinates with their own creations, rather than them? I think it's more likely to be from another powerful country. whose technological strength might not be inferior. Let us not forget that the former alliance was quite strong. They were the first to send a person into space. Are you suggesting that they also have a grudge against their subordinates and send out their most advanced technology to teach them a lesson? That seems very much in line with the character of a fighting nation. Ode listened to their discussion and felt somewhat disdainful. How could it possibly be them? Although they might have purchased individual combat matches, there is no reason for them to wade into this mess. What a bunch of fools. They just want to believe anything. Ode didn't bother to explain any further. Just wait until my mech warriors return and fly in front of you. I can't wait to see your expressions. Chapter 100. The Destruction of the Fighter Squadron. In a certain country's defense department. Is this thing really worth 20 billion? The defense minister Vladimir looked at the mech suit before him, clutching his chest, feeling a pang of regret. Do you know how many fighter jets we could equip with 20 billion? And we ended up buying just this? Couldn't you wait for me to return to make a decision? Vladimir felt a bit cheated. During his time abroad, the country had spent a large sum to purchase two so-called mech suits, each one costing 20 billion. That's a total of 40 billion. In his view, if this money were used for other aspects of national defense, the benefits would definitely outweigh those of these two mechas. It is known that the economy in that region is not doing well, leading to a significant reduction in defense spending. Even the director of the Defense Department has to budget carefully with a mere 100 million local currency. General Karov, who is responsible for procuring individual combat mechas, was also quite helpless at this moment. Director, the other side only gave us 3 days to consider. We cannot wait for your return. Many experts here have conducted in-depth inspections of this mecha. They found its combat capabilities astonishing, absolutely worth the investment. Moreover, the price has been reduced by 100 billion. You must know that the original price of this mecha was 300 billion. 300 billion? Vladimir was taken aback by this terrifying price. It's so expensive. Why doesn't the other side just seize it? And the sudden 100 billion discount indicates that the profit margins are enormous. Only we would foolishly go ahead and buy it. Karov replied, of course not. He pointed at the mecha and said seriously, oil-rich nations have also purchased it. And they bought it at the 300 billion price. They directly paid 300 billion for 10 units. As Vladimir listened, his eyes widened even more. 300 billion. He swallowed hard. They are making a fortune off this mecha? After a long while, he finally came back to his senses. What about this photo? He pointed to a photograph on the table. This was obtained by our intelligence department a long time ago. The photo shows a conceptual design of a mecha. The image closely resembles the mecha in front of us. Vladimir felt that the photo looked very familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Karov then reminded him. Have you forgotten? This was the conceptual design released by the other side. But there was only one image, with no parameters. And you said it was garbage, tossing it on the table. The intelligence department didn't take it seriously and just filed it away. Now, unexpectedly discovering that the mecha in this photo resembles the one from the other side, we took it out. After he said this, Vladimir felt a flicker of memory. Suddenly, he was struck by an unbelievable thought. The design of this mecha is from the other side. How could the other side have produced a similar mecha? They wouldn't have just copied the design, would they? He recalled how easily they had obtained the design, almost as if it had been intentionally released. If they could get it, perhaps the other side also had a similar design. Could it be that the other side really built this mecha based on the design they provided? But this design is just a conceptual drawing. Can something like this even be built? When did the technological strength of the other side become so formidable? Karov also thought of this, and the two exchanged glances, both unable to hide a flicker of shock in their eyes. However, they soon reassured themselves that it must just be a coincidence. They are fortunate. If the relevant parties were to find out that the concept mecha they propose to intimidate others has truly been developed by a certain country, they would likely regret it immensely. Director, what are your thoughts? Just before arriving at this office, Karov suddenly spoke up. He had suggested preparing to purchase 2 more mechas from a certain country. He had witnessed the power of these mechas. He felt that the future would belong to them. And if another nation only possessed 2 mechas, it might fall behind others and be unable to protect its vast territory. However, the problem was that Vladimir thought it was too expensive. Even though Karov praised the mechas highly and even shared a video of them battling 5th-generation fighters, he still felt that without real combat testing, the true capabilities of the mechas could not be determined. I will reserve judgment on your proposal for now. He neither agreed nor rejected it. By the way, I have some intelligence here. Vladimir placed a document on the table, gesturing for Karov to take a look. Karov opened the file with suspicion and scanned it, discovering that it was about a coalition of several desert countries launching anti-air operations against a certain target. Among them was a familiar name, the oil-rich nation. It had also participated in this anti-air operation. That nation likely already possessed individual combat mechas. Karov voiced his deduction. Vladimir nodded. I was thinking the same thing. Moreover, not long ago, our intelligence department received news that a certain target had purchased several 5th-generation fighters from a certain country. They will likely be used in this battle. When mechas face off against 5th-generation fighters, we will get our answer on which is superior. At this point, Vladimir paused and continued. Did you not suggest we purchase 2 more mechas? We are not in a hurry. If the powerful mechas you mentioned can demonstrate their combat capabilities in this battle, it won't be too late to buy them then. It would also silence those who oppose us. Karov pondered for a couple of seconds before nodding. That sounds good. I just hope results come quickly. I don't want the mechas from a certain country to be snatched up by others. Vladimir wanted him to be more patient. This is war, not a game. You need to have some patience. This battle may last several days. Just then, his phone suddenly rang. He picked it up, and the other side began chattering rapidly. When they reached a critical point, Vladimir's expression froze in shock. Then, with disbelief, he said, "What did you say? The aircraft from the target have been completely destroyed by a mysterious flying object?" Chapter 101, The Final Battle. The Doom of the Aircraft Squadron. In the skies over the Cheshire region, an aircraft was roaring through the wind. The pilot was already sweating profusely, and his hands gripping the controls were drenched. Who could have imagined that this ace pilot, now on the side of the team, had previously achieved a remarkable record by downing 3 enemy aircraft and 8 others in battles against a coalition? Upon returning to the base, he would undoubtedly be treated as a hero, once again writing a legendary chapter in his career as an ace pilot. He might even be inscribed in the annals of his team. However, all these beautiful dreams seemed to shatter with the appearance of an unidentified flying object. Now, on the battlefield, he was the only aircraft left, struggling to hold on. The enemy, like a harbinger of death, wielded their scythe effortlessly, bringing down other aircraft with ease. Just as they had once easily defeated the coalition forces. No, to be precise, their efficiency now was several times greater than it had been then. In the blink of an eye, his comrades' aircraft were being shot down one after another. Moreover, the enemy's methods were equally ruthless. They did not spare even the parachuting pilots, killing them as they descended. The key was that they could not protest against this, as they had treated the coalition pilots the same way. The ace pilot of his team had pushed his aircraft to its limits. He dared not let himself be caught. He knew that if he were caught, his fate would be the same as those pilots. Either he would be blown up along with his aircraft, or he would be shot down while parachuting. It was a certain death either way. At that moment, he regretted deeply why he had been so merciless towards those parachuting pilots. Otherwise, he might have had a glimmer of hope. But now, it was too late for regrets. Just then, the alarm system in his aircraft suddenly went off. The ace pilot realized that he was locked on by the enemy's missile. His heart raced wildly. It felt as if it were about to leap out of his throat. Even though his heart was filled with fear of the mysterious flying object, he still managed to skillfully deploy a decoy missile at the moment the enemy's missile was launched. The enemy missile, upon detecting the decoy, changed direction and targeted it. An explosion followed. The decoy successfully detonated the missile, averting the crisis. He was certain that if he had been hit by that missile, he would have exploded along with his aircraft. The missile's power was immense. He had witnessed many comrades being blown up by missiles. Fortunately, he had managed to deceive the enemy with the decoy. The ace pilot let out a sigh of relief. Just then, out of the corner of his eye, he seemed to see a shadow appear above him, accompanied by a jolt of the aircraft's body. He suddenly froze, as if a certain suspicion had formed in his mind. This suspicion sent chills down his spine, and his fear peaked at that moment. He slowly raised his head, directly locking eyes with the so-called shadow above his aircraft. At that instant, this pilot finally understood who they were fighting against. His pupils dilated instantly, and a buzzing sound filled his head. It felt as if he was witnessing the most shocking thing of his life. Mechs? A fantastical creation that only appears in sci-fi movies and television. At this moment, it was vividly right in front of him. In an instant, he felt a sense of unreality, as if he had entered a dream. Had he already died? Was this an illusion after death? The ace pilot of the team suddenly felt a madness that blurred the line between reality and dreams. In other words, he was so stimulated that he felt a bit dazed. He even forgot to control the aircraft. The fighter jet was about to spiral out of control and plunge downwards. The mech made its move. Of course, it wasn't he to save him, but to punch through the cockpit cover, and a powerful airflow rushed in through the shattered cover, the cold wind cutting like a knife across the pilot's face. In the next second, the mech reached out again, filled with endless hatred. As if it had found a target, tightly gripping the opponent's neck, accompanied by a crisp crack. It directly crushed the opponent's neck. The ace pilot met his end within the cockpit just like that. The whole process was actually very quick, from the shattering window to the crushing of the pilot's neck. It took less than 3 seconds. The pilotless fighter jet plummeted straight down until it crashed. Before that, the launchers beneath the mech suddenly increased their power and moved away from the aircraft. Finally, they merged with other mechs and flew off in a certain direction. At the command center on the ground, General Stanford's face turned ashen as he watched the last light spot disappear from the radar screen. It was over. Their fighter jet formation and the coalition's fighter jet formation had met the same fate. They had originally thought they would return as victors, with a celebratory banquet already prepared for them, but instead, what awaited them was a funeral. It should be noted that these were elite pilots honed through many battles. Given them a third-generation aircraft, they could engage in aerial combat with enemy fourth-generation fighters. And now, they were all gone. I will take them to the international court for not adhering to international laws. Shooting down our aircraft was one thing, but why did they have to exterminate our pilots? General Stanford was already beside himself with rage, wishing he could send an army to flatten the desert nations. However, his protests seemed ineffective. One of his subordinates helplessly said, "General, it won't help to take them to the international court. We were the ones who first exterminated the coalition pilots. The international court won't heed our protests." Upon hearing this, General Stanford's face darkened even further. At this moment, he regretted his earlier orders to eliminate the coalition pilots, as he was the one who gave the command. This was truly shooting himself in the foot. Just then, a staff member suddenly stood up. Sir, we have received a message from Colonel Scotty. Colonel Scotty was the last ace pilot who had been killed. Stanford was quite surprised. Wasn't he? It said that the communication equipment had malfunctioned? How did this message get through? He approached the staff member and discovered that the other party really had sent a message. It seemed that after Scotty escaped the interference range, the message was sent. According to the information, they had not detected the enemy's presence during the battle. This was similar to the situation where the ground command center could not track enemy movements on radar. Based on this information, Stanford concluded, it seems our opponent is a highly advanced stealth aircraft. Chapter 102. Are all fifth-generation fighters gone? Here, the team temporarily concluded that the unidentified flying object attacking them was an advanced stealth aircraft. The entire command center engaged in intense discussions centered around this type of aircraft. However, where did these aircraft come from? I can't believe that the desert forces could produce such powerful aircraft. Could it be the Bear Country? No, it can't be them. We have no grievances with them. Why would they cause us trouble? It can't be those from the European region either, as we share common interests. And they have no reason to turn against us. Could it be the Dragon Nation? No, the people of the Dragon Nation may have some opinions about us, but the official stance does not. Surely it can't be the other side. As soon as this was mentioned, the room fell silent. Logically, they are the little brothers of that side, and the big brother shouldn't help outsiders against their own. But the other side has always acted purely for profit. It's common for them to turn against someone for their own interests. They could even be beating you one moment, and then the next moment. They could be friendly and trying to build connections. However, currently, there is no evidence to suggest that they were the ones behind this. Of course, there is another speculation. That is, the oil-rich nations might have purchased advanced aircraft from countries with high technological research capabilities. After all, money can make things happen. They have previously purchased a number of mushroom eggs from the Dragon Nation, even though the launch rights still belong to them. But then again, would any country really sell such advanced aircraft just for money? It's easy to eliminate over 50 of their aircraft. Even if the latest fighter came, it wouldn't have such a high elimination efficiency. The more I think about it, the more confused I get. Moreover, there's another issue to consider. What should we do next? Commander, should we carry out airstrikes on the desert nations? Everyone's gaze turned to Stanford. After pondering for a moment, he immediately said, continue with the airstrike plan. Deploy the newly formed Air Force to escort the bomber units. The newly formed Air Force consists of fifth-generation fighters purchased from that side. Stanford sneered. Now that the enemy has destroyed our entire fighter formation, they must be feeling quite pleased. They probably think we will be afraid of them. At this moment, we need to strike unexpectedly. Someone raised an objection. But General, the enemy's aircraft performance is very strong. What if our fifth-generation fighters are not their match? Stanford answered calmly. Fifth-generation fighters are our trump cards. How can you know which is superior without trying? We have to compare them. Otherwise, we will always live in the fear created by the other side. After saying this, he immediately ordered, deploy the newly formed air squadron. Bomb the refugee camp closest to our base. I want it to turn into a sea of flames. Stanford nearly shouted this through gritted teeth. His subordinates quickly relayed his orders. However, just as the call was connected, the subordinate responsible for conveying the command suddenly turned pale with fear. What did you say? Repeat that. Oh my God. Stanford sensed something was wrong and furrowed his brow. What happened? What is going on? The subordinate slowly put down the phone, his eyes glazing over, and said, the person in charge of the new air base said that just a short while ago, the base was attacked. All 20 F-35 fifth-generation fighters stationed there have been destroyed. At this, the room fell silent. A silence so profound that one could hear a pin drop. After a long while, they finally reacted and erupted in anger. Those damn guys in the Desert Coalition, they really should be damned. They destroyed all our fifth-generation fighters. How despicable. I wish I could swallow them alive. That was our trump card. We hadn't even used it yet, and it was destroyed. How could we not have anticipated they would target our fifth-generation fighters? That is worth billions. Just like that, it's gone. My heart is bleeding. The Desert Coalition is inhumane. Deploy the troops. We must avenge this. If we don't repay this grudge, I will recognize them as ancestors. The command center was filled with rage. These guys could no longer hold back. The uncle could bear it, but the aunt could not. The Desert Coalition must pay the price. Even the usually rational General Stanford had a grim expression, extremely furious. This was a miscalculation on his part. He had not expected the enemy's stealth force to be so bold. Not only did they destroy their formation, but they also actively attacked and annihilated their fifth-generation fighters. This truly touched his sore spot. At that moment, photos began to arrive from the air base. Stanford looked at the photos with a serious expression, and in the background of the photos, he saw the airport where their newly formed fighter squadron was stationed. However, what he found hard to believe was that the photos captured the culprits who destroyed their precious fighters, and these culprits were not the so-called stealth fighters. They were humanoid mechs wrapped in metal. The images were both surreal and real, but Stanford and the high-ranking officials could hardly believe it. The enemy actually sent mechs to fight them, not to mention the technological gap being like a chasm. The key question was how could the Desert Coalition possibly possess such advanced machines? It must be fake. The person in charge of the base must have deliberately doctored the images to cover up his responsibility. Stanford thought to himself. However, there is still a video to follow. In the video, the mechs appear ghostly. Their speed and combat power are undeniable. and they effortlessly destroy the 5th-generation fighters parked at the airport. Their combat capability can only be described as terrifying. It is well known that videos cannot be manipulated. Doghead. So this is real. Stanford is completely stunned. Mechs. The enemy really deployed mechs. And not just one, but a full 10 mechs. No wonder they could easily annihilate the fighter formation. On one side are 3rd-generation fighters, and on the other side are mechs that only exist in science fiction. The gap between both sides is not trivial. In other words, the coalition cannot win outright, so they resorted to underhanded tactics. But the problem is, how could the coalition possibly have such exaggerated mechs, which are even more advanced than so-called stealth fighters? Just then, an expert from the Command Center's Armaments Research Institute looked at the photos of the mechs and found them increasingly familiar. Suddenly, he slapped his forehead. He realized, isn't this the conceptual mech released in the previous materials? Chapter 103, we need to have a serious discussion with them. What does this mean? Stanford asked the expert. The latter informed Stanford about the previous release of the mech's concept drawings. Now everyone finally understood what was happening. So these mechs were sent by them? Is it really them? Even though everyone found it hard to believe, the evidence was right before their eyes. They couldn't possibly have produced something based on their own designs, could they? It should be known that the drawings had no parameters at all. One might think it was the work of some artist's science fiction. It is 100% certain that they were secretly taking action against them. Those cunning individuals indeed play both sides. When they sold us the fighters, they even gave us a discount, and now they send mechs to secretly eliminate our fighters. I think they want us to keep buying their fighters. Their subordinates must have had a stroke of bad luck. I knew this guy was only interested in profit. Don't let us catch an opportunity, or we will definitely seek revenge. So what now? Should we just endure it? We have lost 25th-generation fighters and over 53rd-generation fighters, along with those elite pilots we painstakingly trained. Are we really going to endure this? Everyone's gaze fell on Stanford. He slowly squinted his eyes, and a flash of brilliance erupted from his deep eyes. Report the situation to the Defense Secretary. Let him decide. Secretary of Defense Clussen is known for his temper. When he learned of the situation, he slammed his fist on the table. He immediately used a secure line to call the Secretary of State. Mr. Jack, this is Secretary of Defense Clussen. I demand an explanation from you. Why did you attack us? Just as the Secretary of State picked up the phone, he was met with the roar on the other end, leaving him completely stunned. In the past, he would have sternly demanded the other party to calm down before talking to him. However, the situation seemed quite special this time. It had already escalated into a conflict, and to his recollection, there had been no orders for war issued from above. How could it have provoked such anger from the other side? Dear Mr. Curzon, I know you are anxious, but please, hold on. I want to understand what exactly is going on. I remember, we did not send troops to your side. Of course. Our relationship is so good that we have no intention of deploying forces against you. Curzon retorted, nonsense. You are indeed putting on a front. You may not have sent troops, but you deployed mechs. You sent 10 mechs to destroy our fighter formation and obliterated the 25th generation fighters we just purchased from you. You really know how to do business, don't you? Destroy our aircraft and expect us to replenish our stock from you? Your calculations are quite loud. The Secretary of State was completely taken aback by Curzon's words. He was stunned for a full 5 seconds before responding in surprise. Wait a moment, Mr. Curzon. Not to mention we would never engage in such despicable actions to boost our fighter sales. But did you just mention mechs? Did you just say we deployed 10 mechs to attack you? Mr. Curzon, don't you think what you're saying sounds quite science fiction? I suggest you take a good rest. Curzon snorted. I had already guessed you wouldn't admit it. No tears until you see the coffin, right? Unfortunately, we have captured evidence. Curzon sent over all the photos and videos as evidence, initially thinking that Curzon was just talking nonsense. The secretary was also taken aback after seeing the so-called evidence. Although the images were blurry, it was clear that there were indeed many mechs causing destruction at the airport of the other side. Among them were the 5th generation fighters they had recently sold, all destroyed by these mechs. Not to mention Curzon. Even he felt a pang of regret seeing those aircraft ruthlessly obliterated. Of course, what mattered more were these mechs. Jack felt as if he was being left behind by the times. The fact that such a feeling could occur to a Secretary of State, who was supposed to be at the forefront of the era, felt absurd. These were real mechs, and according to Curzon, their combat capability was astonishing. Could this be something that the inhabitants of this planet could produce? Had some nation communicated with extraterrestrials to obtain their technology? Just as the information age was being understood, was it already time to enter the mech era? Jack fell into a daze. It wasn't until Curzon cleared his throat that Jack slowly regained his senses. Mr. Secretary, you must give us an explanation, or this matter will not end here. Jack, coming back to himself, said firmly, first of all, Mr. Curzon, I can clearly tell you, we did not do this. Calm down for a moment. I will investigate this matter later, and I assure you that I will get to the bottom of it. With the assurance from the Secretary of State. Continuing to entangle further seems pointless. I give you 3 days, and I hope that after this period, you can provide us with a satisfactory result. With that, the call ended abruptly. Jack also hung up the phone and continued to look at the photos and video materials. The mechs displayed impressive performance that left him astonished, marveling at how this was indeed futuristic technology. It was now vividly before his eyes. What he found hard to accept was that, as the Secretary of State, he had never heard of any domestic lab developing mechs. Moreover, these were 10 units of mechs, definitely not something a small workshop could produce. They might have even achieved mass production. The more he thought about it, the more he felt an indescribable sense of oppression within him. It was as if the crisis of a change in world dominance surged to the forefront of his mind. Suddenly, he thought of the country's intelligence agency and cursed. Damn it, what is the CIA doing? This mech suddenly appears, and they have no information at all. Jack realized he needed to have a serious discussion with them. Chapter 104. Has the technology of a certain nation become this formidable? In the desert, at the Coalition Command Center. On the radar screen, the last light point disappeared. Watching the vanished light, everyone present was excitedly celebrating. Revenge has been taken. The enemy's fighter jet formation has been completely annihilated, and the unidentified flying object helped us avenge. What a relief. It was truly exhilarating. They never expected revenge to come so quickly. The combat power of that unidentified flying object was extraordinarily strong. Even fifth-generation fighters could not have wiped out the enemy's formation so swiftly. Which nation is secretly assisting us? We are truly grateful to them. This kindness will be remembered, and we will definitely repay it when the opportunity arises. Listening to the enthusiastic discussions, Odubio couldn't help but smile slightly, a hint of amusement on his face. What would their reaction be if they knew it was me helping them? Odubio smirked and silently sent a message to those mech warriors. He then walked out of the command room. They noticed Odubio leaving and were puzzled. What is going on? Why did Prince Odubio go out? Did our previous attitude upset him? Who made him boast first? He should consider the condition of his own military. Claiming those flying objects were from their oil-rich nation was just ridiculous. Yes, even if they are wealthy, money isn't everything. Can you bribe aliens with money? The crowd paid little attention to Odubio's departure and continued discussing the unidentified flying objects. Shortly after, boom, a tremendous sound suddenly erupted in the sky. The deafening noise startled everyone present. What was happening? Could it be that they retaliated against us with missiles and intercepted them in the sky? How reckless. Our fighter squadron was destroyed, and we didn't even mention revenge. Wait, how did they know our command center was here? No matter. We can't stay here any longer. We need to relocate. As they spoke, panic began to spread among them, and they all stood up, eager to rush outside. General Muller stood up and spoke to calm them down. Don't panic. Those sounds earlier were not explosions. They were sonic booms. It should be our allies returning. Allies? What allies do we still have? Wait, could it be the mysterious flying objects? As they stepped outside and looked up, their eyes widened in astonishment. Above the vast, blue sky, several mechas stood like deities, exuding an overwhelming sense of advanced technology and might. Their lines were sleek and sharp, as if the most intricate geometric shapes in the universe had manifested into reality. The metallic shell shone with a cold luster under the sunlight. With various precision sensors and weapon systems embedded in the shoulder armor, the lines extended from the body, creating a visual effect of outward expansion, further enhancing the mecha's imposing presence. Then these mechas slowly descended to the ground, fully revealing themselves to everyone present. And yet, they were all stunned. They were dying to know what those mysterious flying objects were. Now they knew. Mechas. The mysterious flying objects turned out to be mechas. Just one glance confirmed that this was a future product condensed with countless advanced technologies. Now they appeared before them, as if in a dream, yet incredibly real. General Muller was also dumbfounded. Unable to believe it was real, he decisively pinched his thigh. Ouch. The pain meant he wasn't dreaming, which meant everything before him was real. Mechas truly existed in the world. But were these mechas really those unidentified flying objects? His subordinates quickly provided the answer. General, the radar isn't showing any signals from these mechas. Hearing this, Muller hurried to the radar, his gaze fixed on the screen, and he was taken aback. Just as his subordinate said, the radar screen was completely blank. It was impossible to acquire any signals from those mechas. This meant that these mechas were indeed the unidentified flying objects that helped them destroy the enemy's aircraft. There was no doubt about it. With a mix of anticipation and excitement, Muller walked over to the mechas. Dear friends, thank you for your help. Can you tell us where you come from? The gazes of other high-ranking officials were all focused on these mechas. Some even wanted to ask, are you aliens? But hesitated to voice it. At this moment, the mechas walked straight towards Prince Odubio. Under the puzzled gazes of everyone, they slowly formed a line, standing in formation and saluting towards Odubio. Reporting to Your Highness. The mecha formation successfully completed the assigned mission. Please review, Your Highness. Upon hearing this, everyone present was utterly stunned. This action from the other side made everything clear. These mechas truly belonged to the leader of the opposing faction. He wasn't joking or messing around. These mechas indeed belonged to their oil-rich nation. Once this was confirmed, everyone felt their hearts shatter. We are all brothers. How can you show off like this? One flower stands out among the crowd. Even Li Yunlong's wife is named Xiao. You might as well just show us up. That leader, I apologize for my earlier outburst. General Muller suddenly spoke up, and this proud coalition commander was now apologizing to the leader. As he began to speak, other high-ranking officials also started to apologize to the leader. Seeing their reaction, the leader couldn't help but smile widely. Previously, they didn't believe what he said, but now they were lining up to apologize. His expression was quite amusing. What made him even happier was that after this battle, their royal family's reputation would surely soar. Although he was very excited inside, the leader tried to remain calm. He accepted their apologies. Then he looked at his mecha troops and asked, has the attack mission been completed? His subordinate replied, it's done. We have destroyed all the aircraft in the airport, and those planes seemed quite advanced. Your Highness, we recorded everything in real time. Please watch the VCR. Everyone gathered curiously, wondering if these mechas had other tasks as well. After watching the video, they could no longer contain themselves. Your Highness, you also sent them to attack the airport of the opposing faction? Goodness, those were 5th-generation aircraft parked at that airport, right? You destroyed them all. Ha! This is truly satisfying. The opposing faction must be bleeding now. These are 5th-generation aircraft, and they've been completely destroyed. The opposing faction has lost all their trump cards. Your Highness, your subordinates have done a great service. The leader was also very pleased. The threat of 5th-generation aircraft was significant to them, and he didn't expect to eliminate such threats so easily. This also indirectly demonstrated the strength of the mechas. At this moment, more and more people looked at the mechas with burning eyes. Muller couldn't help but ask, Your Highness, where did you buy these mechas? From the Bear Nation? Or perhaps from another? The leader paused for a moment. Can't they be developed by ourselves? Everyone suddenly froze. The leader quickly corrected himself, grinning. Ha, I'm not bragging. I know we don't have that capability. I can tell you, since this news won't stay confidential anyway. These mechas were sold to us by the Dragon Nation. Upon hearing this, everyone was taken aback. The Dragon Nation? Their technology is that impressive? In front of them lay a set of documents, detailing the specific circumstances of the recent battle between the Desert Coalition and the opposing forces. The performance of the Desert Coalition, which managed to destroy over 50 aircraft with their mechs, had caught the attention of the intelligence department monitoring the battle. As they reviewed the documents, the senior officials were taken aback. 10 mechs challenging 53 third-generation aircraft, with 0 losses. They even managed to spare enough capacity to destroy 5th-generation fighters at the opposing airbase. The combat power of these mechs was indeed impressive. Not just impressive, it was terrifying. Although the opposing forces deployed 3rd-generation aircraft, their pilots were elite. Even against 4th-generation fighters, they would still have a fighting chance, especially with such a significant number, over 50 aircraft. Yet they were completely annihilated by the mechs. This was truly alarming. Thus, whether in actual combat or during exercises against real 5th-generation fighters, the mechs had demonstrated their formidable combat capabilities. Who would have thought that the technological level had reached such a frightening stage? The senior officials became serious, realizing they hadn't anticipated such a sudden technological leap from the opposing side while they were slowly developing in their respective weapon research fields. The weapons developed had left them far behind. Some experts even believe they had been outpaced by an entire era. At this moment, General Karov spoke up. The new era is already beckoning us. Since we are behind, we must be aware and seize the opportunity to board the ship of the new age. He looked at everyone, especially at the Defense Department head. Vladimir, I still stand by my initial suggestion. 2 mechs are too few for us. The oil-rich nations have purchased 10, and we must buy at least 2 more. We should gather 4 mechs, 2 to guard the east, 1 for the west, and 1 for the north. Someone curiously asked, what about the south? Is there no need for defense there? Karov explained, the south is the opposing nation. Do you think there is a need for defense? Everyone suddenly understood. It had been manageable before, but currently, there was indeed no need for defense. There wouldn't even be a need for 1 mech to stand as a show of force. Otherwise, if the opposing nation found out, they might misinterpret it as a provocation and send dozens of their own to confront them, which would be troublesome. At this point, Vladimir spoke up. Initially, he thought purchasing mechs was a waste of money. However, upon seeing how a militarily weak nation could use mechs to easily overpower a relatively strong military force, he realized that times had truly changed. They had to arm themselves with mechs. I agree with Karov. Being proud and complacent equals slow suicide. We must keep up with the times. I propose we purchase 2 more mech suits. Everyone exchanged glances and ultimately nodded in agreement with Karov's suggestion. But when they thought about the hefty price tag of 200 billion, Vladimir felt a headache coming on. For the country that can now be described as impoverished, a fighter jet costing 20 billion is certainly not a small amount. 2 jets would amount to 40 billion. Other officials chimed in, expressing concerns about the domestic economic situation. Where could we possibly find 40 billion in local currency? I recall that the purchasing side prefers cash. It seems we can't even take out a loan to buy them. So what should we do? We must procure the mechs at all costs. Otherwise, how can we protect our vast territory? Vladimir pondered for a moment and suddenly said something to his subordinate, who then returned with a document. It was a naval vessel contract order, with the purchasing party being the other country. Recently, they had shown interest in ordering 2 types of destroyers, as they wanted to leverage our manufacturing capabilities to build more powerful warships due to their own shipbuilding technology still lagging behind. However, this order had not yet officially taken effect and was still a draft. The others began to contemplate Vladimir's decision to present this order at this moment. Karov seemed to have guessed something, but decided to ask Vladimir directly. Director, what do you mean by this? Vladimir smiled and said, this order is worth 10 billion. They previously expressed a strong intention to purchase, and I believe we can use this order to offset 10 billion. What do you think? 10 billion is not a small amount. Everyone nodded in agreement, feeling it was entirely feasible. However, this would have to be negotiated with the other side. Vladimir felt they had no reason to refuse. He even thought they could take this opportunity to negotiate further. After all, they had a strong purchasing intention, and he could easily come up with a reason to add another 1 to 2 billion to the order. With this thought, Vladimir couldn't help but chuckle softly. He then called the other side to express the idea of using the agreement to offset cash for the mechs. The person responsible for the purchasing side was the Navy commander of the southern region, Zhao Yong. Upon hearing the request, Zhao Yong calmly replied with a smile. You mean the previous intention agreement? Sorry, but we no longer plan to make the purchase. Vladimir, who was ready to vent his frustrations, was taken aback by this response. What? You're not buying anymore? Weren't you very eager to buy before? Zhao Yong smiled calmly. Times have changed. Besides, we haven't signed a formal agreement. So there are no penalties, right? And you were quite troubled back then. So this saves you from any difficulties. Director, am I wrong? Vladimir was about to deny any troubles, but felt it would make him seem small, so he held his tongue. The reason he had initially appeared troubled was mainly to negotiate a higher price. He never expected that this would turn into the other side, using it against him. However, at this moment, Zhao Yong thought for a moment and suddenly said, if your side does not want to settle in cash, I have an idea. Vladimir was momentarily taken aback and quickly inquired, what idea? Zhao Yong replied with a calm smile, exchange for your shipyard. Chapter 106, the rabbit has earned crazy profits. A shipyard in hand. Am I hearing this correctly? The Dragon Nation actually wants to exchange mechas for our shipyard? How could they have such an idea? I understand now. They must be looking to obtain our special equipment. Although the Dragon Nation's shipyard is quite famous, some of its equipment is not as advanced as ours, and they want to acquire the manufacturing technology for these devices. The Dragon Nation's calculations are truly sharp. The sudden proposal from the Dragon Nation took the representatives by surprise. They never expected that the Dragon Nation would aim at their shipyard. However, they also knew that the Dragon Nation's intention was to obtain the equipment and the technology within it, which still caught them off guard for a moment. At this time, Vladimir tentatively asked, I wonder which shipyard your country is referring to? It is well known that there are quite a few shipyards in their country, with several being world-class. Zhao Yong calmly replied, I am referring to your Pineapple Sea shipyard. As soon as these words were spoken, the conference room of the Defense Department fell silent. The high-ranking officials seemed somewhat incredulous that the Dragon Nation would propose trading for the Pineapple Sea shipyard. Established in 1856, the Pineapple Sea shipyard is the cradle of their Navy's warships and has built approximately 400 vessels to date. Throughout history, it has aided the rise of the naval fleet during the wars against various adversaries after World War I and II. Many renowned warships were constructed around the time of World War II, including the Sverdlov-class cruiser, Type 613 medium torpedo submarine, Type 651 diesel-electric submarine, and Type 44 nuclear-powered missile cruiser, among others. The most famous, the Peter the Great missile cruiser, is hailed as an aircraft carrier killer. Additionally, this shipyard participated in the construction of their nuclear shield, with nearly all nuclear-powered icebreakers and surface vessels produced by the Pineapple Sea shipyard. It can be said to be one of the most important and historically significant shipyards in their country. Hearing that the Dragon Nation had set its sights on this shipyard, the high-ranking officials were instantly displeased. No way, absolutely not. The Pineapple Sea shipyard's significance to us has surpassed its value. It is the cradle of our naval warships and symbolizes the rise of our Navy. We cannot sell it to the Dragon Nation. I also firmly oppose this. It is not for sale at any price. Although the Pineapple Sea shipyard is not what it used to be, its technology and nuclear power research is unparalleled. If the Dragon Nation wants other shipyards, we can consider it. But if they want the Pineapple Sea shipyard, I can only advise them to stop dreaming. Vladimir also understood the significance of the Pineapple Sea shipyard to them. He suggested that the Dragon Nation choose another shipyard. But Zhao Yong refused. Mr. Vladimir, you should be thankful that we have not yet achieved success in nuclear power research. Otherwise, you might not hold your shipyard in high regard. However, I can share with you that we have made significant breakthroughs in this area, and once we succeed, you will miss this opportunity. I understand the importance of the shipyard to you, but a nation cannot rely on these illusory totems for survival. If I am not mistaken, the shipyard is already on the brink of bankruptcy. The situation is just as Zhao Yong said. Even if the shipyard had the capability to build nuclear-powered warships, it would still need orders. Since the dissolution of the former alliance, the shipyard has suffered heavily, military orders have decreased, and it cannot compete with Western nations in the civilian market. It was only through procurement from another country that it managed to survive for a while. Zhao Yong paused, and then continued. Now I give you a choice. Are you going to cling to this significant shipyard or exchange it for something more valuable in terms of national defense, like new era mechs? Zhao Yong emphasized the term new era to remind them that times have changed. The ships of the new era are already in front of them. Whether they board them is up to their decision. Of course, if you prefer to pay in cash, let us forget this conversation. Zhao Yong's words seemed to pierce through the facade, forcing them to confront the harsh reality. Would they choose the so-called symbol of naval resurgence, or something that could genuinely enhance their national defense capabilities? The senior officials fell silent. They were shaken by Zhao Yong's words. After a long contemplation, Vladimir finally sighed. But we are reluctant. We have invested over $1 trillion in the shipyard. Upon hearing this, Zhao Yong realized they were wavering and immediately said, a single combat mech costs 300 billion. How about we exchange 3 mechs for you? Everyone was taken aback. The gloomy atmosphere was lifted, and smiles of excitement appeared on their faces. 3 mechs. They initially thought the other country would only exchange 1. Although they had invested a lot in the shipyard, it was now worth only a few hundred billion. However, Vladimir suddenly sensed something was off. Wait? ISNTA mech supposed to be 200 billion? Zhao Yong paused for a moment and looked at Lu Qingji nearby. They communicated briefly, and Zhao Yong then said to Vladimir, that was the previous promotional price. You can't expect us to keep giving you discounts forever. Upon hearing this, their spirits immediately sank. This meant that if they wanted to continue purchasing 2 mechs, it would not be 400 billion, but rather 600 billion. The difficulty had increased again. Thus, using the shipyard to exchange with the other country had become the best strategy. A shipyard on the brink of bankruptcy is offering to trade for 3 nearly trillion-dollar mechas. This deal seems quite promising. Vladimir inquired about the opinions of others. After careful consideration, they also changed their stance, agreeing that trading for the mechas was indeed a more reliable option. Vladimir was quite tempted. He didn't have a deep emotional connection to the Pineapple Sea, mainly due to the naval aspect. However, they agreed. Thus, there were no obstacles left. Mr. Zhao, I believe it would be better to discuss this in person. Some things cannot be clearly conveyed over the phone, Vladimir said excitedly. Zhao Yong calmly smiled. Welcome your side to our country for a face-to-face discussion. Vladimir quickly hung up the phone and decided to personally travel to the country for negotiations. Zhao Yong put down the phone and smiled at Lu Qingji. The director's tone was quite excited. This matter is already 99 settled. Lu Qingji laughed as well. If they knew the cost of our mechas, they'd probably be infuriated. 3 mechas, at most 2 to 3 million each, in exchange for a shipyard with $1 billion investment. This deal is definitely a huge profit for our country. As for why they targeted the shipyard, it mainly stemmed from the current slow manufacturing speed of warships. Zhao Yong was personally overseeing the shipyard, while Su Chan returned to the laboratory to continue researching core components related to warships. Despite mobilizing considerable manpower and resources, the shipbuilding speed still left Zhao Yong feeling unsatisfied. However, with the Pineapple Sea shipyard in the future, relying on its specialized engineering machinery, the speed would definitely improve significantly. Chapter 107. It really is the country. In a certain intelligence agency, the director Smith was sitting in his office, carefully examining a photograph in his hand. The photo depicted a massive mushroom cloud, enormous and featuring various colors indicative of extremely high temperatures. This satellite image captured the scene of a test involving an electromagnetic cannon. It had been detected by the agency's satellite equipment and uploaded accordingly. Smith stared at the gigantic mushroom cloud, deep in thought, with several experts beside him also studying the photo and examining some collected data. After a while, one expert put down the photo and, puzzled by the data, remarked, "How strange. The shocking scene in this photo should only be caused by a large hydrogen bomb explosion. Why is there no electromagnetic radiation? Could it really be, as the country's announcement suggested, a meteorite falling? How large must that meteorite be?" Smith nodded gravely. "I actually hope it is a meteorite falling. That would mean the country hasn't developed large-scale destructive weapons. However, the location of the fall is quite coincidental, right where they were testing the mushroom egg." At that moment, a bald expert suddenly laughed. "Why not let it fall in the capital? That would definitely make big news. It's best to take down all the high-ranking officials from that country." Just as this was said, a loud bang suddenly echoed through the room. Everyone inside was startled, especially the bald expert, who thought that the country was taking action to eliminate them. He couldn't understand why he had that thought. The group angrily turned to the source of the noise, only to find that the office door had been violently kicked open. They were about to question who had the audacity to kick down their door when they saw who it was. It was their Secretary of State, Jack. At that moment, Jack stormed in with an expression of anger, slamming a photograph down on the table. Seeing his fury, the others were no longer angry, but rather confused. "Mr. Jack, who made you angry?" Smith stood up, looking bewildered. He glanced at the others, who were equally puzzled, not knowing what had happened. "How can you even ask me?" Jack glared at Smith and then questioned. "There's a country that has developed a mech of this magnitude, and you CIA have no information at all? Are you all incompetent? You're using taxpayer money, and yet being so negligent. Do you really want the president to kick you all out?" Jack's words left everyone in the room completely stunned. "Mech? What mech?" Just as Jack was still fuming, he picked up the photograph and threw it right at Smith's face. Not only had they developed it, but they had also put it into combat. And you all hadn't received any intelligence. To say you're incompetent is an understatement. Smith picked up the photograph and said, "I understand, Mr. Jack. I'll look into it right away." Still not grasping the situation, Smith glanced at the photograph. But once he looked, his expression changed as he furrowed his brow. There was indeed a mech in the photo, and it looked remarkably familiar. Soon, it was as if a current ran through his mind, and his body jolted. He understood what was going on and pointed at the photo, saying, "Isn't this the thing we fabricated to fool other countries?" Jack frowned. "What do you mean?" Smith quickly explained. "A long time ago, we had someone design some so-called concept drawings and release them. The purpose was to mislead other countries into thinking we had developed powerful weapons, thus instilling fear and deterring them. And this mech concept was among them." As he spoke, he retrieved a concept drawing from the classified file cabinet that resembled the mech in the photo and placed it on the table. Jack picked it up and, upon inspection, found that the drawing was indeed very similar to the mech in the photograph. "How come I didn't know about this?" Smith replied. "Maybe it's because your tenure has been short. Also, we never expected it would actually fool someone, so the plan just faded away." Hearing this, Jack's expression suddenly froze. Pointing at the mech in the photo, he exclaimed, "What is going on here? Didn't you say this was just a concept drawing?" How has it been developed by someone? Worried they wouldn't believe him, Jack even showed them a video. Upon seeing the single-soldier combat mecha wreaking havoc at the airport, Smith turned pale. His scalp tingled. It wasn't just him. Even the experts were left dumbfounded, completely at a loss. Among them were proponents of the original plan, some of whom had even personally designed some of the concept drawings. Now, seeing a nation actually turning the conceptual designs into reality, they were starting to lose their composure. Which nation could do this? How could they create a mecha from drawings that didn't even have parameters? Was this even possible? At that moment, the identity of the nation producing the mecha became the biggest question in their minds. Suddenly, Smith's body jolted again. His expression turned increasingly fearful. It seemed he had an idea of which country it could be. He kept trying to convince himself that it was impossible. It couldn't be them. But just then, the door of the room was ruthlessly slammed open. The loud noise attracted the attention of everyone present. They turned to see a key member of the intelligence department entering. His expression was complex and serious, as he conveyed extremely important information to everyone in the office. Boss, we've received news. A nation rich in oil has attacked the airport, and they used mechas as their means of attack. Moreover, according to the intelligence, all these mechas come from a certain country. Boom! At this revelation, the room was in shock. Smith's mind was like thunder rolling. He exclaimed in disbelief, "It really is them." Chapter 108. Public Sale of Mechas. Previously, Smith had received information about mechas from that certain country. At the time, he didn't take it seriously. He thought they had been deceived. After all, the drawings had no research value. Even if they had the capability, they couldn't produce them completely. He even thought about sending some concept drawings to them to mislead them further. Now he thought it was better not to. It was already a boast, but that country actually dared to build it. The Secretary of State was also taken aback. He had speculated whether it could be from certain regions or another nation. However, he completely overlooked that country. In his view, although that country's economic and military development was strong, it still lagged behind in technological fields compared to truly developed nations. Now, the intelligence stated that it was mechas produced by that country. This left the Secretary of State feeling a mix of emotions. At that moment, the video continued to play, showing the mechas causing destruction at the airport. Throughout this process, the mechas displayed formidable combat capabilities. Their speed was astonishing, almost ghostly. It was as if a superhero from a movie had appeared in reality. Not only is the mobility impressive, but the weapon launch system on its shoulders is also incredibly powerful, capable of destroying a fighter jet in an instant. In just a few minutes, it can annihilate all aircraft within the airport. This scene, resembling something out of a science fiction movie, now unfolds before everyone, leaving them in shock. Both Smith and Jack realize the seriousness of the situation. We have no idea what kind of technology was used to create the mecha from the eastern country. We also have no idea how to respond to the threats posed by this mecha. Right now, we need a lot of intelligence, but currently, our agency has almost no information regarding this mecha. Smith also recognizes his negligence in this area and understands why the Secretary of State was so furious earlier. The situation is indeed very serious. It even concerns whether the dominant power can continue to impose its hegemony on the world. Now, the red flag seems to be charging towards their base. The flag that symbolizes so-called freedom is on the verge of collapse. Smith looks at the Secretary of State. "Mr. Jack, our agency has indeed made a mistake in this regard, but I hope we can address my accountability after this matter is resolved. We have more important issues at hand. I suggest that we spare no effort to obtain a mecha from the eastern country for research." Jack knows that now is not the time to assign blame. The urgent matter is to understand the mecha from the eastern country. However, he also realizes that it would be quite difficult to approach it directly from that side. It might be better to start with the oil-producing nations. If we can't handle the eastern country, how can we not manage a small oil-producing nation? What good is money when faced with the dominant power? You are merely a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. After Jack expresses his proposal, Smith thinks it's a good idea. Conveniently, there is a conflict between the oil-producing nation and the eastern country. We can sacrifice some interests of the eastern country to gain leverage over the oil-producing nation. Jack thinks this is a great angle, and they share a smile, immediately preparing to take action. Just then, a key figure from the agency who had previously conveyed the intelligence speaks up. "Mr. Jack, there's no need to complicate things. The eastern country has already publicly announced the sale of their mechas." What? Upon hearing this news, Jack and Smith are stunned. Smith incredulously asks, "Is this information true? They are really willing to sell such powerful mechas publicly?" Jack's expression turns extremely serious. Have they lost their minds? If we possessed such advanced mechas, they would absolutely be classified as state secrets. How can they sell them publicly? Are they that desperate for money? They both remain skeptical about the authenticity of the information. However, if the news is true, it could save them a lot of trouble. Send someone to investigate thoroughly. Jack immediately orders. Although they don't understand why the eastern country would act so foolishly, if the news is true, they believe the eastern country is making a grave mistake with this move. While confirmation of the news was being busy over there, the head of the defense department from a certain country, Vladimir, along with the previous representative, General Karov, had already arrived at the territory of another nation by private jet. As they disembarked from the plane and surveyed the airport, they noticed some individuals dressed in unique attire, characteristic of a specific region. Vladimir and Karov exchanged surprised glances. Could people from that region also be here? At that moment, Karaf spotted a familiar face among the crowd, the prince from a certain oil-rich nation, Prince Odbao. Karaf greeted him, and Odbao, upon turning around, was equally surprised. General Karaf, what a coincidence. You also came to this country. Karaf nodded, and they introduced each other. It was then that Vladimir realized that it wasn't just representatives from the oil-rich nation who had come. Almost all the countries from the prior coalition were present as well. May I ask what brings you to this country? Vladimir inquired curiously. Odbao and Karaf shared a knowing smile, and before Odbao could explain, it seemed he had already guessed the other's purpose. Perhaps our objectives are the same, said Odbao. Vladimir was taken aback. You are also here to purchase mechas? Odbao smiled widely and nodded, just as I thought. Yes, we are indeed here to acquire mechas from your country. Given your strong intelligence-gathering capabilities, I'm sure you are aware of the power of your mechas. Our coalition nations are very interested in them, and today, we've brought them here to make purchases. Vladimir looked at the large group behind Odbao and couldn't help but swallow hard. With so many representatives, you must be planning to buy quite a lot. Odbao glanced at the people he brought along and calmly responded, actually, we won't be buying too many. Our country doesn't need to purchase. It's mainly them who are here to buy. We should be able to take back around 10 mechas. 10? Vladimir's eyes widened in surprise. You're telling me that's not a lot? Chapter 109, Envy to Tears. Vladimir was astonished. These desert nations were actually planning to purchase 10 mechas. At 3 billion each, that's 30 billion. These folks really have money. However, Vladimir was a bit curious. Can this country produce so many mechas? Such advanced mechas surely can't be manufactured easily. It must require extremely complex procedures and processes. Just as he was pondering this, the staff responsible for reception from this country approached them and led them to an office. Lu Qingji was waiting for them in the office. Upon seeing them arrive, Lu Qingji enthusiastically welcomed them. He had to be warm. After all, they were here to bring money. After a brief greeting, ODBU directly said, Mr. Lu, these are our friends. They are very interested in the mechs manufactured in your country. We just heard about the sale of mechs, so we came to purchase a batch. Lu Qingji was having his assistant serve tea to the guests when he heard their words. He nodded and asked, how many are you looking to purchase? ODBU replied, about 10 mechs. Everyone's gaze turned to Lu Qingji. They shared the same concern as Vladimir, wondering if that number was too high for the production capacity of Longhua. Although they knew that oil-rich nations had quickly completed their own purchases of 10 mechs, they wondered if that was just leftover stock. No one was clear about Longhua's current production capabilities, fearing that they wouldn't be able to handle such a large order. If Lu Qingji knew their worries, he would surely laugh. What a joke. 10 mechs? Could we possibly not handle that? Not to mention 10. We could easily produce 100. Lu Qingji nodded. No problem. We will sign the agreement shortly, and once it's signed, we will begin preparations for production. Lu Qingji agreed with ease, which relieved the representatives of the Desert Alliance. However, Vladimir was somewhat shocked. Was that it? Could Longhua handle such a large order? Their production capacity must be astounding. Vladimir felt as if his country had fallen far behind Longhua. At that moment, Lu Qingji spoke again. Since everyone is here for a group purchase, I will offer you all a discounted price. Each mech will be 100 million Longhua coins cheaper. Upon hearing this, Vladimir grinned. Longhua was indeed generous. A discount of 100 million on 300 billion worth of mechs? These were all resource-rich nations. Not short on money. Would they really care about that 100 million discount? In fact, they didn't. After calculating, the countries suddenly had a certain idea. ODBU then said, Mr. Lu, thank you for the discount. We discussed it and would prefer to pass on this discount. However, we have a condition that we hope you can agree to. Lu Qingji was taken aback. 100 million Longhua coins seemed small, but for 10 mechs, that added up to 1 billion. They didn't care about that. Lu Qingji didn't rush to agree but asked them to specify their condition. ODBU continued. Your country should know that we are currently at war with Daixing. While it is your freedom to sell mechs to whomever you wish, we hope that, considering how well we are treating your business, you will not sell mechs to Daixing. Lu Qingji pondered seriously. Daixing was a loyal ally of a certain country, while these wealthy clients were the real customers for Longhua. Not only were they rich, but their military capabilities were also quite weak. The advanced AI systems in the individual combat mechs could truly enhance their combat strength. It will never happen that advanced weapons result in only a minimal increase in combat effectiveness due to issues like soldier quality. Whenever a single soldier combat mech is purchased, military combat power will experience a geometric leap. After using them for some time and witnessing the enhancement of national military strength, they might even consider buying more mechs. With this in mind, Lu Qingji immediately nodded and replied, I cannot make this decision alone. However, you are our valued clients, and I will do my best to persuade the higher-ups to agree to your terms. They originally did not expect the nation to truly agree to them. The mechs have proven their strong capabilities, and now it's a seller's market, where buyers have no right to set conditions. Nevertheless, Lu Qingji's words brought them hope. They proactively shook hands with Lu Qingji to express their gratitude and quickly finalized the order agreement with the nation. 10 mechs cost 300 billion. Witnessing the profits roll in, Vladimir felt a pang of envy. Of course, it was out of jealousy. How wonderful it would be if they could have that much money. And this was just from the Desert Alliance. Those wealthy individuals from the European region hadn't even made their move yet. If they were to buy, they could certainly acquire a lot as well. After the Desert Alliance order was confirmed, Zhao Yong also knocked and walked in. Upon seeing Vladimir, General Zhao smiled. Sorry, Director Vladimir, I was delayed due to some matters. Regarding our two countries' transaction, please come to my office for a detailed discussion. Vladimir didn't mind and followed Zhao Yong to another office. Once everyone was seated, Zhao Yong got straight to the point. How has your country considered our proposal? Do you agree to exchange mech for your shipyard in the Pineapple Sea? Before coming, Vladimir had already discussed this with the senior management back home. It was difficult for them to come up with hundreds of billions in cash. However, if they could exchange it for a nearly bankrupt shipyard, they could indeed consider it. After all, mechs were too important to them. In contrast, the Pineapple Sea shipyard was more of a totem witnessing the glory of the old era and held little practical significance. Vladimir finally said, after careful consideration, we have decided to accept your country's terms. Zhao Yong smiled calmly. Great. Since your country has agreed, I have another proposal. We are also interested in another shipyard in your country. Vladimir. Chapter 110. Do not crack. Consequences are yours. What does this mean? Is your country trying to go back on the agreement? Initially, it was agreed to exchange one of the shipyards in the Pineapple Sea for 3 of your mechs. What does it mean to now be interested in another shipyard? Vladimir felt a bit angry, thinking Zhao Yong might be backing out. Don't be agitated, my friend. I believe you must have misunderstood. What I mean is, we are willing to offer one more mech in exchange for that shipyard. Willing to offer one more mech? Vladimir realized he had indeed misunderstood. I thought you wanted to use the 3 mechs we previously discussed to exchange for our 2 shipyards. I apologize for my earlier outburst. Zhao Yong chuckled and waved his hand. Do you think we are like those bandits? Vladimir also laughed. Now he was a bit curious. Mr. Zhao, our investment in the shipyard is quite substantial. While one mech is valued at 3 billion, it may not be enough to secure a decent shipyard. Zhao Yong seemed to have anticipated this point. He had his assistant bring over a map and pointed at it. This shipyard isn't large. I don't think the investment will be too high. Vladimir and Karov looked in the direction he was pointing. The former frowned slightly and asked Karov, do we have a shipyard here? After a moment of contemplation, Karov suddenly remembered. Yes. This shipyard is not performing well. Apart from being near a certain body of water and getting some orders due to its favorable location, it is generally operating at a loss. He looked at Zhao Yong with some curiosity. I'm wondering what Mr. Zhao sees in this shipyard? Zhao Yong smiled calmly. What do I see? Didn't Mr. Karov already mention it? I'm precisely attracted to the geographical location of this shipyard. As far as I know, the investment in this shipyard shouldn't be 3 billion. Trust me. Exchanging one mech for it will only benefit your country. Vladimir's eyebrows twitched in surprise that the other side would offer a mech to exchange for a shipyard he had never even heard of. If he hesitated now, it would be a disservice to that 3 billion. It's a deal. Vladimir was overjoyed. Upon hearing the other party actually agreed, Zhao Yong was equally ecstatic. Using a mech worth a few $100,000 to secure a shipyard was truly a profit. Although the investment in this shipyard isn't 3 billion, it is still around 2 billion. This is a win-win for both sides. Thus, in a friendly atmosphere, they ultimately exchanged 4 mechs for 2 shipyards. At the research base in Yinjiao, Su Chun was busy adjusting equipment. To ensure the smooth operation of the warship, Su Chun prepared 3 fusion cores to form a power supply array. Fusion cores are an extremely advanced energy technology capable of producing enormous, clean, efficient, and sustainable energy. By combining 3 fusion cores into a power supply array, it not only meets the daily needs of the warship, but also provides ample energy for various advanced weapon systems on board, especially the electromagnetic cannon. This incredibly powerful weapon requires a massive amount of energy to unleash its true potential. With the power supply array formed by the 3 fusion cores, the energy required for the electromagnetic cannon is fully guaranteed. Just as Su Chun was fully focused on adjusting the equipment, his phone suddenly rang. He paused his work, picked up the phone, and saw it was a call from Lu Qingji. Old Lu, what's up? On the other end, Lu Qingji's excited voice came through. Su Chun, I have great news. A certain country has brought us a large batch of clients. We have sold 10 mechas again, earning over $1 trillion. General Zhao also used 4 mechas to exchange for 2 shipyards from a neighboring country. One of these shipyards in the Pineapple Sea is a world-class facility. If the neighboring country knew that our mecha costs only a few $100,000, and we managed to acquire 2 shipyards for just 2 to 3 million, they would probably be furious. When Su Chun started manufacturing super battleships, he also learned about various countries' shipyards, including the Pineapple Sea shipyard. It truly is a world-class shipyard. It's surprising that the country managed to acquire it at such a low cost. No wonder Lu Qingji was so excited. Who wouldn't be? After reporting the good news, Lu Qingji had another important matter to discuss with Su Chun. Just after the Desert Alliance left, another small nation approached us to make a purchase. This country is backed by a certain powerful entity, and I suspect they were instructed to buy by that entity. Su Chun smiled calmly. Small nations typically don't have that much money. Plus, purchasing powerful mechas would be pointless for them. Instead, it would be seen as a provocation by neighboring countries. So it's easy to guess that it's highly likely that the influential entity is behind this. Su Chun then said, don't worry, old Lu. We don't need to care about who is buying. Even if it is that powerful entity, we don't have to worry. We have our space mechas to uphold the nation. They can buy as many as they want. Su Chun was completely unfazed by the situation. Seeing his confidence, Lu Qingji's worries also faded away. As they suspected, the small nation was indeed acting on instructions from that powerful entity. Although our country announced the public sale of mechas, The influential entity hadn't shamelessly stepped in to make a purchase themselves. Instead, they commissioned a small nation to assist. After a long wait, the mechas were successfully delivered to the influential entity. Upon seeing the true appearance of the individual combat mechas, the high-ranking officials were taken aback. This was like futuristic technology from a sci-fi movie, now vividly presented before them. It felt almost like a dream. At the same time, they felt unprecedented pressure. Just how advanced is our country's technology that it can produce mechas? Especially since this mecha was based on a concept design they casually discarded. Creating a mecha from such a concept is even more challenging than coming up with their own original designs. The influential entity could not afford to wait any longer. They immediately decided that they must crack the mecha's technology and master all its secrets to create their own mechas to counter our country. Just as they were preparing to decipher it, an assistant discovered that the mecha came with an operating manual. Upon opening the first page of the manual, a prominent warning was written in multiple languages. Do not attempt to crack the operating system. Otherwise, you will bear the consequences. Lockheed Skunk Works. This facility is an innovative research and development design department of Lockheed Martin. Its official name is the Advanced Development Programs, established in 1943. It has the capability to quickly design, develop, and produce prototypes, having developed the majority of highly advanced aircraft. Notable models include the F-104, U-2, SR-71, and F-117A. Of course, the most famous F-22 and F-35 fighter jets are also research projects from this facility. At this moment, the chief research expert, the renowned Dr. Bruce, was intensely focused on the individual combat mech before him. Chapter 111. Is the progress of the decryption over 100? Looking at the mech that embodies countless advanced technologies, a greedy glint sparkled in Dr. Bruce's eyes. He couldn't help but reach out to touch the mech's metallic exoskeleton, marveling that this seemed beyond human capability. Almost like a product left behind by aliens with advanced technology. Let's get started. I can't wait to delve into the heart of this mech and understand this treasure. Dr. Bruce was specifically called in as the expert to decrypt the mech. In the entire region, no one could surpass Bruce in this field. He had been nurtured as a genius since childhood and had now become a leading figure in military research. The military advancements in this region have always been far ahead of the world, with Dr. Bruce playing a crucial role behind the scenes. Secretary Jack had high hopes for him as well. Just as Bruce was about to begin the decryption, an assistant suddenly approached with a manual. He handed the manual to Bruce and exclaimed, "Doctor, look at this sentence." Bruce furrowed his brow slightly and followed the direction of the assistant's finger. Seeing the warning not to attempt decryption or face the consequences, he was momentarily taken aback but quickly recovered, breaking into a smile instead. This is just a scare tactic from another country worried about their mech being decrypted. No need to be afraid. The assistant, seeing the doctor so relaxed, said nothing further. At that moment, Secretary Jack suddenly asked, "Dr. Bruce, how confident are you in decrypting the technology?" Bruce glanced at the individual combat mech. The materials and the external details exhibited by this machine are extremely advanced. It's not an exaggeration to say it's decades ahead of us. The secretary's expression suddenly became serious. Noticing the shift in Jack's demeanor, Bruce chuckled. "Mr. Jack, don't worry. While the mech itself is advanced, there's no technology one can't decrypt. You can rest assured." Hearing this, Jack's serious expression eased, and a smile finally appeared. "Then I'll leave it to you, Dr. Bruce. This task concerns our future." Bruce waved his hand, signaling that there was no need for further words. He then began the decryption process, pulling out a metal box and taking out his computer. This computer was designed by Bruce himself, equipped with specialized decryption software intended for various operating systems. As long as the operating system can be cracked, the other party is like a girl who has loosened her clothes. They can see whatever they want. There will be no privacy at all. Once connected to the factory's network, the hacking begins. The mech starts to flicker with various strange lights, as if it is engaged in some sort of confrontation with Dr. Bruce's hacking software. A smile slowly appears on Bruce's face, and the curious Secretary of State leans in, discovering that the hacking process is surprisingly smooth. Soon, the intrusion is complete. Yes, the assistant excitedly clenches their fist. It was so easy to succeed in the invasion. Bruce, however, does not seem as excited. Instead, a hint of disappointment can be seen on his face. It seems that the creator of this mech is a complete novice when it comes to computers. The security system is as simple as a blank sheet of paper. I thought there would be some intense confrontation with the other side, but before I even made a move, they surrendered so easily. The Secretary of State's eyes shine with excitement, praising, as expected of Dr. Bruce. Inviting you was the right choice. Receiving compliments from the Secretary of State, Bruce is now full of motivation. Under his operation, the parsing progress is clearly rising. 10, 30, 50, soon it reaches 80. The parsing process is surprisingly smooth as well. They all watch the computer screen with excitement, as if they can already see the scene of the mech's operating system being cracked. Finally, the parsing progress reaches 99. At this moment, they feel their breaths are heavy. Even Dr. Bruce can't help but feel nervous. It seems they are just one step away from the real breakthrough. By now, many high-ranking officials have gathered close by, waiting for the final breakthrough of one. Some people are secretly clenching their fists, as if cheering on the hacking software. Finally, under their eager anticipation, the parsing progress reaches 100. Upon seeing this, the laboratory erupts with cheers of excitement. Amazing. Truly amazing. Such an advanced mech has such a simple security system. Isn't this just waiting for us to crack it? God is on our side this time. If they knew we cracked their mech, they would surely be devastated. I can't wait to see the look of pain on their faces. Such an important mech, and they openly sell it. Ha! Who would have thought they could be so foolish? This actually makes it easier for us to crack the mech. In other words, their actions have also contributed to our success. Secretary of State Jack applauds from the side. Bruce is so excited that he wants his assistant to open the champagne. Just as the champagne is brought back and they are about to pop it open, an assistant stares at the screen and suddenly notices something strange. Dr. Bruce, why hasn't the hacking process ended even though it reached 100? Bruce dismisses it, saying, it's normal to have some delay. Come on, everyone, let's drink champagne. He pours champagne for everyone, and the scent of alcohol fills the laboratory. After everyone had a drink, they returned to their computers, feeling satisfied. At this moment, they noticed that the progress on the screen, which had already reached 100, had actually changed. To their surprise, it started to rise again. 101, 102, 103, what on earth is this? The progress bar had reached 100, yet it could still increase? Bruce's expression was exceptionally complex. The Secretary of State, standing nearby, inquired, could it be a software malfunction? This was the first time he had seen progress continue to rise after reaching 100. It felt like seeing a ghost. Bruce was also somewhat bewildered. This was software he had personally designed. It couldn't possibly malfunction. He began debugging the system. Then, his expression suddenly changed. In disbelief, he exclaimed, my computer has been counterhacked? Chapter 112, The Collapsing Bruce. Bruce's face turned extremely ugly. It wasn't a software issue. His computer had been counterhacked by the other party. He didn't even know when he had been hacked. It was important to note that his computer contained many anti-intrusion programs he had personally designed. However, during the hacking process, these anti-intrusion programs were completely unresponsive. As if they were dead, Bruce felt a tingling sensation on his scalp. He ran his fingers through his hair, trying to figure out where the problem lay. Seeing his expression, everyone present was also stunned. They had just celebrated with champagne, and now he was telling them the hack had failed. Not only had it failed, but he had been hacked by the other side. The roles have reversed. This sudden change left them all in shock. The Secretary of State hurriedly said, shall we try to hack again? Bruce thought for a moment and realized that it seemed they had no other choice. Just as he was preparing to attempt to hack the mech operating system again, a staff member rushed into the lab. Dr. Bruce, it seems there is a problem with the central control. Bruce frowned and immediately checked the situation with the central control. When the control interface appeared before him, Bruce almost went crazy. He saw someone, from who knows where, currently erasing their database at an incredibly terrifying speed. Once the erasure was complete, all the information in the database would vanish. This data represented decades of accumulation from the entire facility since its construction. If the other party succeeded, he felt like banging his head against the wall, wishing for death. That despicable person. It must be them. They must be behind this. Bruce looked at the mech before him. Everyone was confused and immediately asked what was happening. After learning the situation, everyone present was instantly dumbfounded. The Secretary of State himself was shocked. The facility was a crucial military manufacturing plant. If all this data were lost, it would deal a heavy blow to the nation's defense efforts. Cut off the power. Quickly, cut off the power to prevent further intrusion. Bruce immediately ordered. The staff hurried to execute the command. Soon, as the power was cut, the laboratory was plunged into darkness. Just as Bruce let out a sigh of relief, a sudden flash of light nearly blinded them. The power was back on. What is going on? Wasn't the power already cut off? How is there still electricity? Bruce then looked at the control center and saw that the erasure operation was still ongoing. A core staff member at the factory then said, I understand now. The factory has an independent backup energy source. Even if the power is cut, the factory can still operate. But only the factory president knows how to cut off the backup energy. But he is on a business trip. Call him. Hurry and call him. They tried, but the call didn't go through. Everyone was dumbfounded. The intruder was exceptionally intelligent, able to mobilize the backup energy to maintain power. The key issue was that there was no way to completely cut off the power. As if that wasn't enough trouble, another staff member rushed over. Dr. Bruce, our factory's machines have inexplicably started on their own. 2 of our staff members have been pulled into the machines. Bruce's eyes widened. He can control the machines? How is that possible? He couldn't help but be skeptical. At that moment, outside the laboratory, they saw a fighter jet speeding down the runway through the window. Soon, the fighter jet flew into the sky. The key point was that there was no pilot in the fighter jet at all. Jack, still unaware of what was happening, asked, is this your latest research on drones? It can fly without anyone. Bruce was overwhelmed. It's been controlled. That is not a drone at all. It has been hijacked. Secretary Jack was taken aback, stunned. They can even control a fighter jet? What if it suddenly crashes down? Moreover, what puzzled them was that the fighter jet seemed to only fly above the factory. If it went slightly further, it would turn back. Everyone was now overwhelmed. On one side was the intruder crazily erasing data, and on the other was the fighter jet under control, which posed a risk of losing control at any moment. Bruce was thinking of a solution. At that moment, he also noticed the strange flight pattern of the jet. It seemed as if a prison had formed above the factory, preventing it from escaping. Realizing this, he suddenly had an idea. Wireless network. This mech is invading and controlling us through the wireless network. He picked up a signal testing device from the laboratory. After some operations, the response from the testing device confirmed his suspicion. Sure enough, they were being invaded through the wireless network. After identifying the cause, he wanted to shut down the MechS system, but found that he couldn't locate the switch to shut it down. Doctor, the data in our database is about to be completely erased. The staff's reminder made Bruce realize that he could only resort to the most extreme measures. He glanced at the fire axe beside him, ran over to grab it, and then swung the axe, aiming at the central control equipment. Bringing it down with a mighty chop. Sparks flew everywhere, making a sizzling sound. Seeing this, everyone thought Bruce had lost his mind. Doctor, that's the central control equipment for the entire factory. You just chopped it? Jack was dumbfounded. Bruce, holding the axe, turned to him and said, if I don't chop it, the whole factory will be gone. He then proceeded to shut down all the wireless devices in the factory. The controlled fighter jets crashed directly. Fortunately, they landed in the open area of the factory, causing minimal impact. The controlled equipment finally quieted down. Bruce collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. The lab was in complete disarray. After a long while, the losses from this incident were tallied up. Nearly 50 years of research achievements in the lab were completely wiped out. During the time the factory was controlled, the equipment went haywire. Like a chaotic dance of madness, some ran wildly, some exploded, and others disassembled themselves. The total loss amounted to over $10 billion. Of course, the most critical loss was the erased data. Upon seeing these losses, Dr. Bruce was so furious that he almost fainted. This frightened everyone. He was a national treasure-level expert. They couldn't let anything happen to him. Jack immediately said, we'll cover the factory's losses. You must take care of yourself. Hearing this, Bruce wanted to yell, you'll cover it? Do you have any idea how massive the losses are? Just the data loss today is enough to set our related research back 10 years. As he spoke, he looked at the combat unit and shouted, get this thing away from me. I can't handle it anymore. Chapter 113. The fusion-powered battleship is about to set sail. Bruce was completely overwhelmed. He had previously boasted about easily handling the mechs from a certain country, but now he felt he was being easily handled. He even felt a sense of fear toward the mech in front of him. Accompanying him in the lab was Smith, the director of the intelligence agency. When he and the Secretary of State heard Bruce's words, especially about the losses incurred today that could set their related research back 10 years, they couldn't tolerate it. The audacity of that certain country to be so treacherous. They must have guessed that we would crack their mechs, so they designed a powerful counter-intrusion system inside. This has caused us significant losses, and we must take revenge. Jack was extremely furious. Smith inquired, Mr. Jack, do you have any thoughts? Jack narrowed his eyes slightly. A cold glint flashing. Notify our allies. I have things to discuss with them. Jack returned to the administration office and found the president. The president was waiting for good news from them, but upon hearing about the subsequent events, he slammed the table in anger. His thoughts aligned with Jack's. They absolutely couldn't let that certain country off the hook. Even though they initially disregarded the manual's warnings and pursued their own agenda, leading to the current situation. That doesn't stop them from seeking revenge against the Dragon Nation. Therefore, the leaders of the three countries, one known for its peculiar cuisine, another often seen as servile, and the last one with a distinctive cultural identity, were summoned to the capital of a major power. You want to deal with the Dragon Nation? Ha. Have you finally decided to take action? I've long found them displeasing. Just let us know what you need, and we will fully support you. The leadership of the first country readily agreed. The third country chimed in. We may not intervene in troubles with other nations, but if it's about the Dragon Nation, we'll definitely lend a hand. The second country hesitated. But our bananas are nearly ripe. What if we can't sell them? And don't forget, the Dragon Nation has recently developed something called a combat exoskeleton, which is said to be quite powerful. The major power replied, what are you afraid of? Just go ahead. If anything happens, we've got your back. Once the task is accomplished, our support for you will be substantial. With the assurance from their big brother, the leaders exchanged glances and quickly reached an agreement. They then began brainstorming ways to create some trouble for the Dragon Nation. Meanwhile, on the other side, in the Dragon Nation, Lu Qingji arrived at Su Chen's laboratory and plopped down in a chair. From his smug expression, it was clear that something good had happened. We received intelligence that there was an incident at a certain factory where the information system was hacked by an unknown force, causing chaos, and even a fighter jet crashed, resulting in direct losses of up to $10 billion. And that's not all. More than half of their research data was lost, severely impacting their work. Furthermore, information from a positioning system indicated that a combat exoskeleton was being delivered to that very factory. This was likely due to their attempt to hack the exoskeleton, which resulted in a counter-invasion by the exoskeleton's AI system. Lu Qingji became increasingly excited as he spoke. It turned out just as Su Chun had said. The exoskeleton wasn't worried about being hacked. If they dared to hack, they would face consequences. And now they certainly were suffering. The losses were not insignificant. Su Chun, you really are something. I always knew you were reliable. Lu Qingji recalled the scene when he had stopped Su Chun from selling the exoskeletons. Looking back, he realized he had underestimated Su Chun back then. This guy is quite clever. Now they've made quite a bit of money from the major power and even managed to trick them. Lu Qingji now felt that the number of exoskeletons purchased from them was too few. If only they had bought more. That way, they could have tricked them even harder. Su Chun, however, was not as excited as they were. He had already anticipated this outcome. Simply causing damage without directly triggering explosions to level the factory was good enough. The main concern for Su Chun was that if there were an explosion, it might provoke the major power. Now is not the time to sever ties. It's important to note that the major power in this world is not the same as the one from his previous world. The forces in this world may have already mastered advanced technologies such as mechs, space mechs, and even electromagnetic naval guns. Who knows what other hidden technologies they have? Therefore, until our nation has developed sufficient advanced technologies to counter these forces, it's better to be cautious. By the way, Su Chun, there is something else I need to inform you. We have completed the rights confirmation for the shipyard, and some advanced special equipment is already on its way. The higher-ups are taking your research work very seriously and have dispatched 2 carrier battle groups to personally escort this equipment. It won't be long before it is all delivered to you. Su Chun immediately smiled. This is really good news. Just in time. My research has also entered a critical period. Once the equipment arrives, it will take about 3 months to wrap things up. Lu Qingji was taken aback by Su Chun's words. In less than half a year, the super battleship is about to be completed? Is this the speed of Su Chun? Now, the term Su Chun speed has become a phrase among the top researchers in the nation. Speed of light is a term in physics, while Su Chun speed has become a term in the research field. With Su Chun speed, it's equivalent to 1 month. Senior figures often use Su Chun speed to educate their students. Research work should not be rushed. Take your time. Can you be faster than Su Chun? However, when students ask who Su Chun is, they are left without an answer and are simply told that he is the greatest scientist of our time. 3 months passed in the blink of an eye. As Su Chun anticipated, the core components have been completed, taking about 3 months. Su Chun once again arrived at the shipyard. He stood at the highest point of the yard, looking at the massive structure in the sea, feeling an extraordinary surge of emotions. The nation's nuclear fusion-powered battleship is about to begin its trial voyage. On the vast coastline of the southern seas, the sea breeze howled. The waves crashed violently against the rocks, splashing white foam. In this powerful and mysterious ocean, a gigantic dock stands tall. This is one of the largest shipyards in the nation, where the highly anticipated large-caliber super battleship lies quietly in the dock like a steel giant. The sunlight shines on its brand new metal shell, reflecting dazzling light, as if proclaiming its majesty and strength to the world. At this moment, General Zhao Yong stands on the high platform of the dock, nervously watching this ship that is about to make history. His eyes are filled with anticipation and a hint of worry. After all, this is an unprecedented great project, and every detail concerns the nation's safety and glory. Now is the critical time for installing the core components, and he cannot afford to relax for even a moment. Chapter 114. Ready to break through the blue planet? Workers bustle around the battleship, their eyes filled with pride and honor. They all know that they are not just building a battleship, but an unprecedented super battleship. It is also a symbol of the nation's maritime power. Every screw tightened, every wire connected, requires their full concentration, leaving no room for error. As one of the core leaders of this project, Zhao Lao feels a heavy sense of responsibility. Of course, the main person in charge is Su Chun, whose primary role is to assist in all supportive tasks. Now, the main body of the warship has been completed, and the next step, which is also the most important, is to install the core component, the fusion reactor. A massive crane slowly moves to lift a precise and heavy core component from the transport vehicle, carefully transporting it into the warship. Workers, dressed in uniform work clothes and hard hats, are busy in a tense yet orderly manner. Every action they take appears exceptionally cautious, as if they are handling a priceless treasure. This colossal piece of machinery is the power core of the Longwei, and its installation requires extremely high precision. The workers first laid thick shock-absorbing pads at specific locations on the bottom of the warship to ensure that the reactor would not generate excessive vibrations during operation. Then, the crane gently lowers the reactor, while the workers nervously observe, ready to make fine adjustments at any moment. When the reactor accurately lands in the designated position, everyone breathes a sigh of relief. Next, the technicians begin connecting various pipes and wires to ensure the reactor operates normally. Their tools move like nimble sprites, weaving between the complex equipment, with each joint tightened just right. Zhao Yong watches the scene with tension. The installation of the core component demands a high level of skill from the workers. There can be no carelessness. Any minor issue could lead to delays in the construction schedule. Even serious consequences could arise. However, these workers are quite capable. Although the installation work is intense, everything is proceeding smoothly. Su Chun begins further adjustment work. During the process, his mind races, with various complex technical parameters and data flashing in his mind. He collaborates closely with his team members, checking each system of the warship, from the power system to the weapon system, from the navigation system to the communication system, leaving no potential problem unchecked. Each issue discovered and resolved brings them one step closer to success. After a round of adjustments, all functions of the super warship can operate normally. This means the super warship is ready for trial sailing. Meanwhile, Su Chun also considers an important question. That is the name of the warship. Such an impressive warship must have a resounding name. He looks at Zhao Yong beside him. General Zhao? Please give our super warship a name. Zhao Yong chuckles. This warship, from top to bottom, even every key part, has been crafted by your own hands. How can I take the liberty of naming it? Naming a warship is an honor. Zhao Yong feels he does not have the audacity to compete with Su Chun for the naming rights, and instead returns this honor to him. Comrade Su Chun, it's best if you name this warship. Su Chun nodded calmly without hesitation, then fell into deep thought. He recalled the history and glory of the nation, the countless efforts and sacrifices made by predecessors to defend the maritime territory, and the sorrow of having to resort to land artillery on ships due to the lack of powerful warships when facing invaders. In that moment, two words emerged in his mind: Longwei. He hoped this warship would showcase the might of our nation. Let's call it Longwei. It shares a similar name with the first space mech, Longwei No. 1, which includes a serial number. However, following naval tradition, each warship will have a unique name. Some overlap is acceptable and won't cause much of an impact. Upon hearing Su Chen's naming, General Zhao Yong was momentarily taken aback, then burst into hearty laughter. Ha! To showcase the might of our nation. Longwei. Good. Great name. Then let's call it Longwei. Looking at the massive vessel before him, Zhao Yong's eyes turned red. After nearly a century of naval ups and downs, with the Longwei, the world would surely witness the strength and terror of our navy in the future. Soon, everything was ready, and Longwei was about to embark on its first trial voyage. The 100,000-ton giant ship, resembling a moving steel castle, slowly sailed out of the dock. On the deck, various advanced equipment and weapon systems were neatly arranged, spanning an area as large as half a football field, showcasing its grandeur and magnificence. The most eye-catching feature was the electromagnetic naval cannon, with a caliber of about 7 to 8 meters. The enormous barrel stood tall, as if demonstrating its formidable power to the world. The super-large caliber electromagnetic cannon was one of the core weapons of Longwei, and its presence would fundamentally change the landscape of naval warfare. Compared to traditional artillery, the electromagnetic cannon boasted a higher firing rate, greater range, and stronger lethality. It could launch high-speed projectiles instantaneously, delivering devastating strikes on enemy targets akin to meteorite impacts. Meanwhile, on the deck, naval leaders visiting the warship were equally astonished by its impressive configuration. Although they were high-ranking officials in the Navy, they were not among the top elite and were unfamiliar with this warship. Hearing that a giant had been created today, they all came to join the excitement. They were soon taken aback by the enormous barrels on the warship, a caliber of 7 to 8 meters. It was their first time seeing such a thing. A naval admiral couldn't help but exclaim, "What is this for? Planning to penetrate the blue planet?" With a 100,000-ton giant ship and a deck the size of half a football field, especially the electromagnetic cannon, whose barrel diameter was 7 to 8 meters wide. At this moment, all the naval leaders were left speechless. Lu Qingji, who was leading the tour, couldn't help but show off in front of everyone. Comrades, this warship is our country's independently developed new generation super battleship. Not only does it have a massive displacement of 100,000 tons, but it is also equipped with the world's most advanced nuclear fusion functional system. This system is capable of providing powerful and continuous energy to warships, endowing the Longwei with ultra-long endurance and high-speed sailing capabilities. General Lu Qingji's voice was loud and strong, filled with confidence. Chapter 115. My back is too stiff. As soon as this was said, the naval leaders were all taken aback. A lieutenant general could not help but ask, "General Lu, are you sure what you just mentioned is fusion technology? We haven't even had a nuclear fission-powered warship before. Now you're telling us that not only do we have our own nuclear-powered warship, but it's also based on fusion technology that is countless times more advanced than fission?" Another general added, "And isn't fusion technology something the whole world is trying to break through?" According to General Lu, "We not only have researched it, but have also applied it to this super warship, achieving a leap from research breakthrough to practical application." The crowd's eyes became fiery, as if they could hardly believe such a miracle could happen to them. However, Lu Qingji chuckled lightly. Appearing unconcerned, fusion technology is merely one of the many technological components of this warship, and it's not even the most powerful. Lu Qingji's words made the generals feel a bit uneasy. What could be more powerful? Come on, old Lu, don't keep us in suspense. Seeing their eagerness, Lu Qingji couldn't help but smile. Opportunities to pique the interest of imperial generals are rare. He laughed. There are indeed many impressive technologies. Just take this main gun for example. Don't be fooled by its large caliber. Its power is truly significant. At this moment, a general puzzledly asked, "Significant? How significant? It can't possibly be more powerful than a nuclear weapon, right?" Lu Qingji grinned. "You've hit the nail on the head." The crowd couldn't hold back any longer. "Old Lu, now you're just talking nonsense. How could this thing possibly have the power of a nuclear weapon? Although the caliber is large, a nuclear weapon and a regular shell are completely different." "Exactly. Even though I haven't studied much, I know that a nuclear weapon is something else entirely. What is this?" Seeing their disbelief, Lu Qingji's stubbornness kicked in. He slapped the cannon body heavily. "What do you think this is? This is an electromagnetic naval gun, not an ordinary gunpowder artillery weapon. Since you don't believe me, you all know about the meteorite impact incident that happened in the recent past, right?" The crowd nodded. This incident had quite a significant response. Naturally, they all knew. A general then asked, "Old Lu, you're not suggesting that the power of this electromagnetic naval gun is comparable to that meteorite impact, are you?" Lu Qingji shook his head. The crowd realized they might be overthinking it. But just a second later, they heard Lu Qingji's voice, like thunder, suddenly ringing in their minds. "Not like a meteorite impact. It's the destruction caused by the shell fired from the electromagnetic naval gun hitting the ground." "What?" At this moment, the generals looked as if they had seen a ghost, their eyes wide open. They instinctively thought Lu Qingji was joking. Come on, don't mess with us. I've heard that the shockwave from the meteorite impact affected areas thousands of miles away. This is even more powerful than the mushroom bomb. Lu Qingji grinned and said, think about it carefully. What are the odds that the meteorite impact point just happens to be where we previously tested the mushroom bomb? It's not that the electromagnetic naval cannon is too powerful. We deliberately said it was a meteorite impact for confidentiality. The generals present were part of a confidentiality agreement and were stunned upon learning the truth. Looking at the Dragon Rihao, their expressions shifted from simple shock to horror. This meant that this super battleship could bypass nuclear agreements and be used as a conventional weapon, yet its power was even more terrifying than the mushroom bomb. It was practically a maritime hegemon. Any enemy daring to send a fleet to engage would face devastating consequences, likely being wiped out in one strike. Wow. I joked before that it could penetrate the blue planet, but if what you say is true, it really can. One general exclaimed excitedly. Their interest was completely piqued, and they urged Lu Qingji to give them a thorough introduction to these warships. Under Lu Qingji's guidance, they gained a better understanding of the Dragon Weiha's basic specifications. In addition to its nuclear fusion capabilities and electromagnetic naval cannon, it also featured 20 smaller caliber secondary guns. This design was considered by Su Chun, who recognized that the main gun's immense power could result in collateral damage due to its wide blast radius in actual combat. Thus, several smaller, yet still effective guns were produced to mitigate the risk of friendly fire. Furthermore, the battleship was equipped with laser anti-missile weapons and utilized materials from space mechs as its main hull component, enhancing its optical stealth capabilities. The crowd was astonished after witnessing these features. Some hawkish generals even proposed declaring war on various nations, including those with whom they had previously clashed, boldly suggesting collective warfare against them. With such powerful weapons now in their navy, who could they possibly fear? Suddenly, a vice admiral exclaimed, from now on, I'll have to stand to take a dump. The others were momentarily taken aback. Why? Because my back is too stiff. Lu, you really know this battleship inside and out. You could almost be its chief engineer. The group looked at Lu Qingji, realizing that he had explained the ship's functions with exceptional clarity. They couldn't help but tease him. And let us not forget, Lu is in charge of the Air Force, now assisting our Navy in building warships. He is clearly not out of his depth. Who knew he was so well-rounded? Listening to their words, Lu Qingji couldn't help but smile widely. This was because he had been assisting Su Chun with a series of research projects earlier, and his work had been highly recognized by the higher-ups. Given the importance of the upcoming development of the super battleship, Lu Qingji was still assigned to support Su Chun in this crucial work. Lu Qingji was very dedicated to this task and was well informed about it. He smiled calmly and said, whether working for the Navy or the Air Force, it's all for the benefit of our country, and it feels the same to me. The others nodded in agreement with his words. At this moment, Lu Qingji looked towards the deck and spotted Su Chun, so he walked over. The generals also noticed Su Chun and exchanged glances. With outsiders present, they reminded each other to be cautious about what they said. This showed their strong sense of confidentiality. They followed Lu Qingji over to Su Chun's side. Lu Qingji observed the battleship slowly leaving the dock and then asked, Su Chun, is it time to prepare for the trial voyage? Su Chun nodded. The various functions of the battleship have been checked, and we can proceed with the trial voyage once it leaves the dock. Lao Lu, please take these leaders to the cabin. Lu Qingji calmly nodded, and then turned to the generals behind him. Everyone, please come with me into the cabin. It will be safer there during the trial voyage. This casual action stunned the generals, who were astonished. Lu Qingji was known for his notoriously bad temper, yet he was showing such respect to a young person, even seeming to comply with his words. They couldn't help but whisper to each other. Who is this young man? Why is Lao Lu being so polite to him? To make an imperial general behave like this kid must have an impressive background. Could he be Lao Lu's son-in-law? No. I remember Lao Lu's daughter is still in middle school. Strange, I haven't heard about such an impressive young talent in our military before. If I tried to give orders to Lao Lu, he'd definitely lose his temper. After Su Chun temporarily left, a naval general couldn't help but ask, Lao Lu, who is that young man? Lu Qingji didn't expect them to be interested in Su Chun, but it made sense since someone as talented as Su Chun would naturally attract attention. However, he didn't reveal Su Chun's true identity. Instead, he stepped on the battleship beneath his feet and grinned. That young man is the chief engineer of the battleship we are standing on. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the others suddenly froze, their pupils dilating in shock as if they had heard some earth-shattering news. A general instinctively began searching for Su Chun's figure, only to realize he had already vanished. Their gazes returned to Lu Qingji. Unbelievably, someone asked, Lao Lu, don't joke with us. He is such a young guy. Does he really know how to build ships? I can't believe he is the chief engineer. Lu Qingji grinned. Look at you all. If I don't say anything, you're curious. If I do say something, you don't believe it. You're really hard to please. By the way, next time you meet him, don't forget to call him Chief Engineer Su. Don't underestimate him just because he is young. When it comes to contributions to the country, we may not even be able to compare to him. At this point, Lu Qingji couldn't help but feel emotional. They say talents emerge from the river of history, each leading the way for hundreds of years. I'm afraid the one to truly stand out in our generation will be Chief Engineer Su. The high-ranking officials exchanged glances, their eyes filled with indescribable shock. Lu Qingji actually held such a high opinion of the young man. He even said he would stand out. You have to understand. This is a land of talent, with an abundance of skilled individuals. Why should he be the one to stand out? Could it be that this super battleship was really made by that young man? Lu Qingji had already said enough for them to believe it. Unexpectedly. What shocked me even more than this battleship was its creator. Is this what they call a genius? Speaking of which, I seem to have some impression of this young man. I heard that our previous mech was also made by a rather young engineer. Wow. Are these two people not the same person? Today has truly opened my eyes. But then again, the battleship personally supervised by Chief Engineer Su Shunti have any problems, right? Some commanders were a bit anxious about his youth, as it really raised doubts about his capabilities. However, it was too late to get off the ship now. The vessel was already preparing to set sail. In the command room, Su Qin's voice suddenly rang out. The battleship is starting its trial run. Please ensure all departments are ready. As this voice echoed, it felt as if a powerful energy began to operate within the Longwei, propelling the ship out of the dock. Everyone's hearts were filled with tension and anticipation. They watched the battleship intently, fearing any accidents. Fortunately, good news came from the heads of various sections in the command room, confirming that all equipment was functioning properly. The initial trial run was a success. Not far away. The technicians at the shipyard were also filled with excitement. They had put in countless hours of sweat and effort for this battleship, and today they finally witnessed its successful launch, their joy indescribable. The battleship floated quietly on the water, its form majestic and grand. Sunlight shone upon it, reflecting dazzling rays. Everyone looked at the battleship, filled with pride and emotion, especially those commanders. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock, along with a hint of embarrassment. The shock was because this battleship could indeed sail normally on the water. They had previously doubted Su Chun's professionalism. Now, it seemed they had overthought it. Su Chun was truly a genius. General Zhao Yong gently placed his calloused hand on the railing of the warship. The sea breeze tousled his hair, seemingly helping to manage his somewhat disheveled white locks. His gaze was fixed on the vast expanse of the sea, and at that moment, he had never felt so excited. It was as if the ambition to conquer the ocean had reignited within him. Even in his twilight years, his spirit remained unyielding. Zhao Yong had once accepted the reality of aging, recognizing that physical decline was a natural process that could not be resisted, but rather embraced for peace of mind. Yet now, he wished to borrow another 500 years from the heavens. This change stemmed from the successful trial voyage of this warship, or more precisely, from Su Chun. He looked at the young man diligently operating the warship in the command room, a slight smile creeping onto his lips. This kid always brings surprises. I wonder what the future holds for our nation under his leadership. I also wonder if this old body of mine will still be around by then. Lu Qingji, standing nearby, couldn't he help but laugh at his words. Old Zhao, why so pessimistic? You're only in your 60s, not like you're in your 80s or 90s. This is the perfect age for adventure. Why don't you apply to lead the troops and find a country to challenge? At his words, Zhao Yong shook off his melancholic mood and replied with a smile. You really know how to comfort people. Just then, various commanding voices began to emerge from the command room. Su Chun was calmly directing the operations, and reports started coming in through the channels. Each clear voice was like a note in a magnificent symphony. Su Chen's voice was steady and powerful. Every command was precise and unequivocal, without the slightest hint of hesitation. His words seemed to possess a magical quality, filling the entire team responsible for the warship's operations with confidence. It felt as if, no matter the challenges faced, as long as Su Chun was at the helm, they could forge ahead and be victorious. For Su Chun, the initial trial voyage of the Longwei was just the beginning. Many more daunting challenges awaited him. Soon after, the nuclear fusion reactor was activated. The entire shipyard was enveloped in a mysterious and powerful force. The reactor glimmered, akin to brilliant stars descending to Earth. Energy surged, reminiscent of a roaring river, tumultuous and vigorous. The powerful energy fluctuations made everyone feel the shock and strength of technology. All equipment smoothly entered normal operational status at that moment, emitting a soft hum, as if declaring their power and reliability to the world. Various weapon systems began connecting to the power network, the complex and precise systems transmitting information swiftly and accurately, much like the human nervous system. Each weapon was like a sharp sword, ready to defend the nation's maritime territory. The Longwei began its voyage, its majestic form resembling a sovereign of the seas. The massive hull surged through the waves, leaving behind trails of white foam. On the shore, the workers watched in awe as the colossal vessel slowly emerged from the dock, finally catching a glimpse of the true form of the Dragon Might. With a terrifying displacement of 100,000 tons, it truly resembled a giant sea beast, exuding an overwhelming power. Just a glance was enough to feel the might it emanated. The enemies, one can only imagine, would tremble in fear. One can hardly wait for the day when the Dragon Might showcases its prowess. By then, the invading foes will realize that our nation has transformed beyond recognition, leaving them far behind. The workers quietly observed the Dragon Might as it sailed out of the dock, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. However, this expectation soon shifted into astonishment. As Su Chun activated the camouflage system and optical stealth technology, the entire warship seemed to vanish into thin air, transforming into a ghost ship. In a matter of seconds, the once massive battleship disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed. Only the gently rippling surface of the sea remained, telling the tale of its recent departure. What the heck? Where did our warship go? Did I see that wrong? One exclaimed in disbelief. Is this a ghost? How could the super battleship we painstakingly built just vanish into thin air? No, look at the splashes. The splashes are still moving. Our battleship hasn't disappeared. It's gone stealthy. Damn it. Our battleship can go stealth? Isn't that invincible? The enemies won't even know where the shells are coming from when they get bombarded. Haha. The workers were even more excited now, cheering and waving at the warship. A general noticed the situation on the shore and couldn't help but laugh. The comrades on the shore are really excited. How can they not be excited? Another general replied. Forget about them. I almost want to jump into the sea and swim a couple of laps myself. Laughter erupted among the crowd. These naval commanders had seen all sorts of warships, even nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, a few times over. But a stealth warship was something they had never encountered before. Not to mention, this warship was equipped with terrifyingly large-caliber naval guns. If war broke out, the enemies might not even know how they perished. At this moment, someone questioned with a hint of confusion, "Hey, what do you think this warship should be classified as, considering it has large-caliber naval guns, can go stealth, and is powered by nuclear fusion?" So many advanced technologies combined into one. As soon as this topic was raised, it sparked deep thought among the crowd. A burly general spoke up. An aircraft carrier. It must be an aircraft carrier. And a super aircraft carrier at that. Don't forget, this warship has a displacement of 100,000 tons, making it a super carrier among carriers. With such a massive size, it's like a moving fortress on the sea. What else could it be but an aircraft carrier? At this point, another general offered a different perspective. I think the Dragon might resemble a strategic nuclear submarine that just can't dive. This peculiar idea left everyone bewildered. The general continued to explain. The Longway is equipped with astonishing stealth technology. Once it activates its camouflage canopy and optical stealth system, it can vanish into the air like a ghost, making it hard to detect. This level of concealment is akin to that of strategic submarines. Coupled with its powerful weapon systems, it possesses destructive capabilities similar to those of nuclear submarines, capable of delivering a fatal blow to the enemy at critical moments. I say it is like a nuclear submarine. You have no objections, right? There were indeed many objections. There is a fundamental difference between surface ships and submarines. Everyone expressed their opinions, and soon the debate became heated. At this moment, General Zhao Yong stepped forward and calmly said, "Everyone, stop arguing. Both aircraft carriers and nuclear submarines can take a step back. I suggest we classify it as a strategic ship. Currently, there is no widely defined type of warship categorized as a strategic ship in the world. However, that was before the Longway was created." General Zhao explained. The Longway has both significant strategic importance and powerful combat capabilities. This classification as a strategic ship accurately reflects its characteristics and value. It will become an important support for the nation's maritime strategy, fighting for the nation's maritime rights and dignity. At this time, a general raised a question, "But General Zhao, there is no such classification as a strategic ship internationally." Zhao Yong smiled calmly. "Well, now there is, isn't there?" He looked at everyone with immense pride and said, "From today onward, when it comes to naval matters, what the international community says doesn't count. What our country says counts." Chapter 118. All units prepare for battle. These words were inspiring. Every word seemed to tell them, today's nation is different. The rules of the international community are to be set by us. Everyone nodded in agreement. They pondered General Zhao's words, and their understanding of the Longway deepened. The Longway is indeed a groundbreaking, epic-making warship. It is only natural for it to have its own classification. Moreover, it is likely that the Longway is the only warship that can be classified as a strategic ship, unless it has a displacement of over 100,000 tons, possesses a nuclear power energy system, and has a weapon system comparable to nuclear weapons. Only then can it qualify to be called a strategic ship. At this moment, all the generals couldn't help but begin to admire the scene of the Longway wreaking havoc. They could hardly imagine how spectacular that would be. The power of a single shell comparable to that of nuclear weapons. How terrifying would an explosion on the sea be? They were very much looking forward to it. The Longway raced across the surface of the sea, like a sharp blade cutting through the water, supported by powerful energy and high-tech propulsion systems. The Longway quickly entered deep waters at a speed far exceeding that of any other warship. Just then, a signal suddenly entered the Longway's reception range. This signal was exceptionally weak, coming from hundreds of nautical miles away, yet it was still captured by the Longway's communication system. Su Chun received the faint signal. He was startled. A faint voice from the signal said, "This is Submarine 304 from the Southern Military District. This is Submarine 304 from the Southern Military District. Please respond. Please respond." Su Chun was taken aback. He didn't expect to receive a signal from a submarine in the Southern Military District. "This is the strategic vessel Longway of the Naval Forces. We are on our maiden voyage. If comrades have any situation, please speak." After a moment of hesitation, the other party asked excitedly, "Are you really from our naval forces? Comrade, we need your help. May I ask where you are now?" Su Chun frowned slightly, picked up the microphone, and provided the coordinates to the other party while asking, "What happened? What problems are you encountering? How can I assist you?" The other party switched to a different person to respond to Su Chun. "Hello, comrades of Longway. I am Captain Zhou Haiqing of Submarine 304. We are on a mission in the open sea near the southern waters and are surrounded by enemy vessels. We need support. Zhou Haiqing's voice was filled with helplessness. If possible, they truly did not want to trouble their comrades. However, the situation was extremely urgent, and they were facing a deadly threat, leaving them no choice but to request external assistance. At the same time, Zhao Yong sensed something unusual and walked over. What is happening, Su Chen? I think I just heard Zhou Haiqing's voice. As the overall head of the Southern Waters, Zhou Haiqing was naturally Zhao Yong's subordinate. Of course, their interactions were not frequent, mainly because Zhao Yong's rank was too high. Although Zhou Haiqing was a captain, he was not in a position to have much contact with Zhao Yong. The reason Zhao Yong could recognize his voice was that Zhou Haiqing, as the captain of Submarine 304, had led his team to accomplish impossible missions multiple times and was hailed as a dragon in the deep sea. The codename for Submarine 304 was also Dragon. It was Zhou Haiqing's bravery that left a deep impression on Zhao Yong. Seeing General Zhao Yong approaching, Su Chen immediately informed him that Submarine 304 was surrounded by enemy vessels. Without any hesitation, he prepared to launch a rescue operation for Submarine 304. Zhao Yong hesitated a bit, but Su Chen had already given the order. They were heading towards the sea area where Submarine 304 was trapped. As the Longwei had changed direction and was moving at full speed, Zhao Yong reminded, Su Chen, don't be too reckless. The situation ahead might be beyond our control. Proceeding carelessly is too dangerous. And don't you forget, the purpose of this maiden voyage is to test the vessel's various data. The command has instructed us to return quickly in case of unexpected situations. Regarding Submarine 304, we can contact the military district to send vessels for support. Zhao Yong was not worried about the vessel itself, but rather concerned about Su Chen. Su Chen was still on the ship, and if they encountered a situation they could not handle, leading to a threat to Su Chen's safety, he would feel that even death would not be enough to atone for it. Su Chen was clearly unaware that Zhao Yong was worried about him. All he knew was that the enemy was about to attack their comrades. Decades ago, they had surrendered, and we had no way to take revenge. Now, nearly a century later, they still dared to bully their own people. This is intolerable. No, this time neither the elders nor the young can tolerate it. We must fight back. Old Zhao lives are at stake. The situation is urgent. We don't have time to notify other ships for rescue. Besides, as you said, our purpose this time is to test various functions. How do we test the weapon systems? Through virtual bombardment? Now is the perfect opportunity to test the weapon systems. It's a rare chance that one T come again, don't you think? While explaining, Su Chen ordered his subordinates to maximize the speed of the Longwei. At that moment, Zhao Yong also realized that Su Chen was determined to go for the rescue. If he continued to try to stop him, it would only make him seem overly verbose. Of course, he could order Su Chen to return as the commander, but he was reluctant to use that approach. He disliked exercising authority over others, especially over someone like Su Chen. Moreover, Su Chen's reasoning had some merit. To ensure the perfect completion of the Longwei's test voyage, using the enemy as a target was indeed a good opportunity. Thinking of this, Zhao Yong stopped saying anything more and decided to fully cooperate with Su Chen. You little rascal, I specially left a set of individual combat armor for you in the cabin. If any dangerous situation arises, put on the armor and get out of here, got it? Zhao Yong said seriously. Su Chen was a bit surprised but nodded and replied, all right, when the time comes, I'll carry you and old Lu out, one in each hand. Of course, he was joking. He had full confidence in the Longwei and believed there wouldn't be such a situation. Then, old Zhao took the microphone from Su Chen and personally ordered, all personnel, prepare for battle. Chapter 119, No Cowards. 2 days ago, Submarine 304 was patrolling according to its designated route in the sea. Captain, we're running low on oxygen. The operator looked at Zhou Haiqing, who had already become the captain of Submarine 304 at a young age of over 30. He immediately ordered, the next stop is the last station for this patrol mission. Let us go there to replenish oxygen. The operator nodded, and then ordered full speed ahead. Upon arriving at the designated location, Submarine 304 began to slowly surface to replenish oxygen. Zhou Haiqing smiled at his subordinates and said, in a few days, it will be the Mid-Autumn Festival, and we've been granted a holiday. Some soldiers haven't been home for many years. This time they can go home and spend the festival with their families. Hearing Zhou Haiqing's words, the soldiers were genuinely excited. They indeed missed home. Some soldiers appeared tough on the outside, but once back in their dorms, they would secretly look at photos of their loved ones hidden in their wallets and wipe away tears. Captain, what about you? Are you going home? A soldier asked. Zhou Haiqing grinned and replied, of course I'm going. My daughter hasn't seen her father for 3 years. I wonder if she has forgotten me? From the smile on Zhou Haiqing's face, it was clear that he was looking forward to the upcoming family visit holiday. All right, everyone should get back to work. No more chit-chat. Once the oxygen is replenished, we'll head back. However, just as the submarine had replenished its oxygen for a short while, an alarm suddenly went off in the command room. What is going on? The operator was startled by the unexpected alarm. It wasn't that the operator lacked composure. It was just that this alarm rarely went off, maybe only twice a year. It was triggered by a sonar buoy. Who placed the sonar buoy nearby? Zhou Haiqing was puzzled, but he didn't think much of it. If their position was exposed, so be it. Could anyone really come after them? This was international waters. They were simply carrying out their patrol mission, and no one was looking for trouble. Just as they had replenished their oxygen, they suddenly noticed something unusual. Ships with the same flag were approaching from the directions of certain nations, surrounding them. The number of these warships was terrifying. There were as many as 16. Sensing something was wrong, Zhou Haiqing immediately ordered the submarine to retreat to their own waters. However, it was clear that the other side was coming for them. Upon seeing them dive to escape, the 16 warships immediately began to surround and intercept them. Zhou Haiqing frowned slightly. What are these guys up to? Do they dare to confront us? Once we leave this area, let us see how long they can chase us. The operator glanced at the radar screen, and his expression suddenly turned serious. He couldn't believe it and turned to Zhou Haiqing, saying, Captain, these guys have dropped a lot of depth charges in our path. They are definitely coming for us. Zhou Haiqing looked at the radar screen, instinctively clenching his fists. He then said, let's try another direction. The vessel changed course and continued forward. But they hadn't gone far before they encountered countless depth charges ahead. Changed direction again. Once again, they discovered a large number of depth charges. Now only one direction remained without explosives. Zhou Haiqing looked toward that direction, his brow furrowed, and easily saw through the other side's scheme. This direction led to another nation's waters. And the other side had scattered a large number of depth charges around their vessel, intending to force the submarine to surface and then enter those waters. This way, they could act with justification. Looking at the dense spots on the radar, all of which were depth charges, Zhou Haiqing couldn't help but curse. What is going on with them, investing so heavily in so many depth charges? Reflecting on the sonar buoy that had suddenly appeared on their patrol route, and now encountering warships carrying a large number of depth charges, Zhou Haiqing realized that the other side was definitely well prepared. It's very likely that there's involvement from other entities behind this. Captain, what should we do now? Zhou Haiqing's brow was tightly furrowed. Given the current situation, there was only one option. That was to call for help. Surrender was not an option. Even if they die from lack of oxygen, they will never surface and surrender to the enemy. With this thought, Zhou Haiqing immediately ordered to contact Allied forces. However, since the opposing side came prepared, they must have countermeasures in place. Among the 16 warships, one of them is a functional type that can interfere with signal transmission. This directly resulted in the signals released by Submarine 304 being extremely weak. After a long time of trying to establish contact, the operator's voice became very faint, but there was still no response. Just when they thought there was no hope, a faint signal was finally successfully received, and it was from the Allies. However, the number of the opposing warship left them puzzled. Longwei-class strategic vessel. Do we have a ship with that designation? Also, what is a strategic vessel? Zhou Haiqing then said. The comrades on the Longwei said they were on a trial run. It might be our Navy's new type of warship. The message has been sent out. Now it depends on whether they can arrive in time. As he spoke, he turned to the operator beside him and asked, how much oxygen do we have left? Report to the captain. We were unable to replenish oxygen normally before. And with the consumption along the way, we now only have 3% oxygen left. It can last for at most 2 hours. They are in the high seas near the enemy's territory, far from their own. 2 hours. I'm afraid it won't be enough. Zhou Haiqing's face gradually showed bitterness as he looked at the crew members inside the submarine, a trace of a sorrowful smile appearing on his face. I'm sorry, comrades. I'm afraid I can't take you back for the Mid-Autumn Festival. Inside the dim and enclosed submarine, the atmosphere was so heavy it was suffocating. The crew members knew that they were beyond saving. The wheel of fate seemed to mercilessly press down at this moment. With the Mid-Autumn Festival approaching, which should be a beautiful time for family reunions and a bright moon, they were trapped in this steel cage deep in the sea. Under the faint light, Zhou Haiqing instructed his aide to take out some mooncakes from the storage and distribute them to everyone. The mooncake packaging was still printed with a full moon, showing a happy family enjoying mooncakes under the moonlight. Some soldiers quietly stared at the packaging, lost in thought. Their hands trembled slightly as they held the mooncakes, their eyes revealing endless longing and reluctance. This mooncake was their last connection to home, a trace of comfort in their desperate situation. A young soldier gently took a bite, the sweetness of the mooncake spreading in his mouth, but tears blurred his vision at the same time. Looking at the young crew member who had just boarded the submarine, everyone fell silent. They all knew this might be their last meal. Although reluctant, they quickly processed the heavy emotions, their gazes becoming firm and resolute. Even that young soldier wiped his tears with his sleeve and then showed a determined expression, a sense of heroic resolve surging in his heart. Submarine 304 has no cowards. Chapter 120. Comrades, don't worry, it's already in operation. Zhou Haiqing looked at his fearless warriors and felt a sense of comfort. It was his honor to be their commander. He waved his hand, signaling his aide to hand them paper and pens. It's time for the familiar part of writing last letters. Previously, he had scared them to help them better prepare for battle. But this time it might be real. Write well, and make your handwriting nice. Who knows, your letters might be exhibited later, and if your handwriting is ugly, I'll have to scold you down there. Alright, you can start writing. Zhou Haiqing turned his back and walked into the command room, afraid to say more, fearing he would lose control and cry. Back in the command room, he found a corner. He also picked up a piece of paper and a pen, and as he began to write, many images flashed through his mind. His elderly parents eagerly waiting for his return, his virtuous wife, and of course, his daughter whom he hadn't seen for 3 years and didn't know what she looked like now. This was supposed to be his last year at 304, after which he could transfer to administrative work and be with his family. But he never expected things would turn out like this. He began with the words "I'm sorry," and ended with "Don't worry about me." The soldiers' letters were finally placed in a special box designated for storing last letters. Everyone once thought this place was unlucky, but now, everyone hoped the letters inside would reach their families one day. The letters were carefully placed in waterproof bags, wrapped layer by layer, and then put into the box. After the letters were secured, a timer suddenly started beeping. To contact reinforcements as much as possible, they would call for help at regular intervals. Besides reaching out to their own side, they also attempted to call for nearby reinforcements. They narrowed the radar signal range to within a few dozen nautical miles. This was the optimal range for support. Any farther, even if they made contact, with their current oxygen levels, they wouldn't last long enough to wait for rescue. However, it was uncertain whether it was the signal jamming of the enemy fleet that was too strong, or if there were no friendly ships within range. All their attempts to reach out ended in failure. This time, they didn't hold out much hope. Nevertheless, Zhou Haiqing decided to give it a try. What if a miracle happened? He picked up the communicator and began to call. However, there was no response. He slowly put down the communicator, then seemed to remember something, picked up the microphone again, and said, "This is Submarine 304. We are on a mission from which we cannot return. Submarine 304 is surrounded by 16 enemy ships. They have dropped too many depth charges around the submarine to block our normal navigation. Yet they have opened a channel to their territorial waters, forcing us to head towards their waters. We understand what this means. Submarine 304 has oxygen for at most an hour and a half. During this time, we will quietly wait for the oxygen to run out." Finally, all crew members of number 304 did not surrender to the enemy. They all bravely went to their deaths. Farewell, homeland. Zhou Haiqing slowly put down the microphone again, thinking that this must be what it feels like to face death. However, just as he was about to completely shut down the communication device, a familiar voice suddenly came through. "Captain Zhou Haiqing? This is the long way. What is happening? Why are you speaking as if it's your last words? We are rushing to the target area for rescue, and we'll be there soon. Hang in there." Zhou Haiqing was taken aback upon hearing this voice. He glanced at the communication range, which had been set to dozens of nautical miles. How could the long way, which had been hundreds of miles away not long ago, receive their message? Or were they about to arrive that quickly? This speed felt too fast. He wanted to say something, but at that moment, another voice came through the microphone. "Commander Su Chun, we have detected a reef 3 nautical miles ahead. Should we avoid it?" Su Chun replied, "No need. Keep going. Crush it. Mr. Jack, the plan is a success. We have trapped the enemy's submarine in the sea. We have surrounded the area with deep-sea bombs. Now the enemy only has one way to go, which is to break into our waters. But that is definitely a dead end. As long as they dare to charge in. Ha ha ha." Admiral Kojiro, the commander of the First Fleet, was reporting the results to the Secretary of State. Recently, the situation had not been favorable for the enemy. The events at the factory had been widely reported by some media, causing a significant drop in the shares of a major defense contractor. This led to the evaporation of hundreds of billions in value. This company has connections to the military, so these losses are also losses for the official side. Many orders were canceled as a result. The CEO was even replaced, but that was just a minor issue. The situation on the other front was much more severe. Recently, the enemy had suffered a major blow. Their battle mechs had already been deployed. In fact, a total of 20 mechs were engaged simultaneously, which forced the stubborn nation to back down. They not only retreated from all occupied areas, but also conceded a significant amount of interests. This included the destruction of a key defense system. This meant that even without mechs in the future, they could easily dominate the opponent with missiles. Seeing that the enemy had truly obeyed this time, the Desert Alliance finally managed to quell their anger. The enemy, having no breakthrough in mech technology, dared not recklessly provide support. Therefore, after all these operations, the enemy gained nothing and even suffered considerable losses. When had they ever experienced such a setback? And all of this was thanks to the actions of the opposing nation. Now, hearing the good news from Kojiro, Jack's long-suppressed emotions were finally released at this moment. "Mr. Kojiro, it really is you. I don't trust others, but I trust you. Your capability is impressive, truly reliable." Receiving praise from the Secretary of State put Kojiro in a great mood. In fact, it was quite a difficult situation to handle. Every issue in the process could allow the submarine from a certain country to escape. But who would have thought that they managed to gain the advantage of time, place, and personnel? This is what trapped the opponent perfectly in the sea. After expressing praise, to be on the safe side, the Foreign Secretary once again reminded, "That country has always been cunning. You must be careful of their reinforcements." Chapter 121, The Epic Beast Racing on the Sea. The commander dismissed this with a sneer. "Mr. Jack, this time fortune is on our side. When we launched an attack on the submarines, we found they were surfacing to replenish oxygen, and we didn't give them much time to do so. Their oxygen levels must be low now. Previously, they were still looking for a breakthrough, and our communication devices detected multiple signals sent out, clearly indicating they were in a desperate situation." At this point, the commander paused, a cold smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. "And now we are in international waters, with no warships nearby, unless they can reach a speed of 100 knots. They won't wait for reinforcements." The commander is among the top-tier leaders of his country. He possesses keen insight and judgment, always being a reliable asset for the Navy. He once claimed he was born in the wrong era. If he had lived during the war, he believed he could have rewritten the history of failure. After receiving his affirmative response, the Foreign Secretary smiled with satisfaction. "Very good. You all did very well. Once this is accomplished, in the next election, we will definitely recommend you to become the new leader of your country. We need a smart person to strengthen the relationship between our two nations. The commander suddenly sat up straight and bowed seriously to the microphone. I am very grateful. After that, the foreign secretary hung up the phone. The commander rubbed his hands together joyfully. With the election approaching and the support from abroad, his competitiveness would surely receive an epic boost. There was even a real possibility of sitting in that position. Thinking of this, he dared not let anything go wrong. He looked at the time and then asked his subordinate, "What is the situation with the submarine from that country now?" The subordinate, who had been staring at the radar, shook his head helplessly. "Report, Commander, the submarine is still the same as before. They are deep underwater and show no signs of surfacing." Hearing this, the commander couldn't help but curse. Damn those people, their resolve is tough. Even at this point, they still refuse to surface? Do they really want to suffocate in their submarine? Submarine number 304. They had prepared for sacrifice, but unexpectedly, the communicator responded again within dozens of nautical miles. And this time the response came from the Dragon's Might, which had been hundreds of nautical miles away not long ago. The speed was unimaginable. It left the surrounding personnel stunned. Chief Su Chun, the coordinates you provided us were clearly still 200 nautical miles away. It's only been a little over an hour, and you are now only 80 nautical miles from us. How could you possibly be so fast? The speed is about to reach 120 knots. Soon, he seemed to realize something. It is well known that generally, the larger the displacement of a warship, the slower it tends to be. Some ships with a displacement of several hundred tons can reach speeds of 60 knots, which is usually their maximum speed. For large destroyers like the 055 class, the speed is only 30 to 35 knots. However, among large destroyers, this speed is considered relatively fast. But now, the speed is reaching 120 knots. Commander Su, are you sending us a small vessel? Zhou Haiqing's earlier excitement gradually calmed down, until Su Chen's voice rang out. A displacement of 100,000 tons should not be considered a small vessel, right? Boom. Upon hearing Su Chen's words, Zhou Haiqing was completely stunned. 100,000 tons? He was sure he hadn't misheard. Su Chun was indeed talking about 100,000 tons. This terrifying figure made his scalp tingle, nearly petrifying him. It should be noted that the largest aircraft carrier of Long Country currently has a displacement of around 80,000 tons, not reaching 100,000 tons. Yet Su Chen claimed that his Longwei class had a displacement of 100,000 tons. Commander Su, are you joking? Does our Long Country actually have a warship of 100,000 tons now? He still found it hard to believe. Although he hadn't been on land for a long time, he was aware of the situation in the Navy. The new aircraft carrier had just been launched not long ago, and the country already had a super warship. This was incredibly unbelievable to him. You didn't mishear. Our Longwei is indeed a super warship with a displacement of 100,000 tons. Zhao Yang's voice suddenly echoed. Zhou Haiqing wasn't very familiar with Su Chun and might have thought Su Chen was joking, but Zhao Yang was his direct superior. He definitely wouldn't joke about this. Confirming that the country really had built a super warship, Zhou Haiqing felt a surge of excitement. As a Navy man, he instructed his subordinates to share this news with the crew, so they could also be happy. The atmosphere inside the submarine, which had originally been heavy, suddenly became more lively. Just then, Zhou Haiqing suddenly thought of something and was even more astonished. Commander, how can a 100,000-ton warship be so fast? Zhao Yong chuckled lightly. Why can't it be that fast? This is our newly developed next-generation warship. Not only is the speed fast, but its combat capability is also astonishing. Do you want to see it with your own eyes? Is that even a question? Of course I want to, Zhou Haiqing said excitedly. Zhao Yang's voice suddenly turned serious. If you want to see it, hold on until we arrive. We are rushing over at full speed. I order you to hold on until we get there. Zhou Haiqing looked at the remaining oxygen, and with the minuscule oxygen levels, he wondered if they could last until then. But he still firmly replied, yes. All crew members of number 304 will definitely wait for your assistance. However, after saying this, he suddenly realized he had forgotten to ask a crucial question. By the way, Commander, how many warships are coming to our aid? Zhao Yong replied, of course. There is only one. Hearing one, Zhou Haiqing's heart sank suddenly. Just received the order to hold on until they arrive for rescue. But there's only one vessel. How can one vessel handle this? No way. We absolutely cannot let them come over. It's too dangerous. So even at the risk of disobeying orders, Zhou Haiqing still intervened. Commander, you must return quickly. The enemy has deployed 16 warships, many of which are large destroyers. Our single warship is no match for them. At this moment, Su Chun's voice came through again, undeniably firm. Captain Zhou, we cannot turn back. Please prepare for rescue. Chapter 122. Want to keep them all? Zhou Haiqing felt somewhat helpless. Through Zhao Yang's introduction, he learned that Su Chun was a major general from a certain country. This surprised him, as Su Chun sounded no more than in his 20s. It hadn't been long since he entered service. When did such a young major general emerge domestically? This caught him off guard. He thought to himself that Su Chun must have exceptional qualities. However, he did not agree with Su Chun's insistence at this moment. He reported the situation to the other side. The enemy had deployed 16 warships, with about 5 weighing over 10,000 tons. And while the others might not reach that tonnage, they were still around 7 to 8,000. These were not small vessels. Knowing the enemy was fierce, yet still risking everything for his crew made him uncomfortable. Then Zhao Yong's voice came through the communicator again. Zhou Haiqing was suddenly excited, as if he had found a breakthrough. Commander, you must persuade Major General Su. This is really dangerous. The enemy has nearly 2 naval formations deployed. If you two fall here, we won't be able to bear it. He knew Zhao Yong was a very rational person and also the highest authority of the Southern Navy. As long as he intervened, he could definitely convince Su Chun. But what he didn't expect was Zhao Yong's next words. All crew members of Submarine 304, listen up. The command authority from now on is fully handed over to Su Chun. His orders represent the will of our Southern Navy. At this statement, everyone was in an uproar.